Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts with an old man's dying breaths, saying that he is an earthling, somebody from a civilized world. A little girl enters, calling him Old Man Seo, saying it sure is sad, but her mother wanted her to bring him this. He thanks her, and she says it's no problem. He just needs to make them some soap again. She leaves, bearing the snow to head back home. The man explains again that he is an earthling, and it has been 50 years since he fell into this world. They were on their way to the company workshop with director Kim and everybody else, when they were suddenly swept up by a landslide. He woke up in a strange land. There was a giant fox with 3 tails, a 2-headed red snake, but also strange men who could all fly. He had fallen into the world of the Muram novels that he used to read from time to time. Despite that, he knew his co-workers would live better lives than everyone else, all except for him. There was a sage-like being who descended from above and was in awe of his co-workers' mythical talents, and took each one of them into the sky. Kim remained on the ground. They had their hopes that something special would happen to them as well, but he and director Kim had no special abilities. Without knowing much about how the world worked, all they could do was manual labor. After 6 months, director Kim told him he couldn't live like this any longer, and used all his money to buy a third-rate martial arts book sold on the streets. Within 3 months, he mastered it, becoming a fully fledged martial artist. He worked for the nation and learned martial arts that were more and more advanced. After that, he became a powerful warrior and left for Zhonghu. He was left all behind. He wondered if something special could happen to him as well, but until the end, there wasn't a single thing. After 50 years, he is now just an old man, dying from the common cold. As he continued to spit up blood, he said that he tried his hardest to live. He learned the language and how to write, made a living, bought a small plot of land, and built his own house. He started making decent money when he began to make soap using lye. In this equivalent of medieval China, soap was essentially a new concept. However, even that ended after thieves stole his recipe, and their thugs booted him out of the market. Now he is waiting for his death, having been refused by the world. He wonders what the world wanted from him in the first place. He tried his hardest, but it was futile. He cries tears full of regret, asking why he could not have been selected, or why he was selected to come here when he's not even special. Everything just gets taken away from him, and he no longer even has the energy to keep his eyes open. If he had just a bit more power, maybe he might have had opportunities. And that was how he died, but also how he figured out his power. As he opens his eyes, he begins coughing while looking at the sky. Then down at his hands, he wonders how he's still alive and recognizes the clothes that he wore on Earth. As he re-sees all his co-workers, wondering where they are, he says that he finally realized he didn't come to this world without powers, and he gained the power of regression. Kim says that they were just on their company trip, and he looks around worried. Seo says it's the first day. They fell into this strange world. While they were in the car, they suddenly got swept up by a landslide, and then they happened to see a bright light. And it's hard to remember what all went down 50 years ago. One of them calls out to him, but he ignores them, saying that if he's regressed, he doesn't know what to do now. Most regression stories start with abusing future information, but all he knows is how to make soap. And we finally learn his full name, Seo Yunyun. The guy screams at him, and he says that he was just surprised. Then, the section chief slaps him, to everybody else's surprise. He calls him an idiot, saying that he dozed off while driving on the mountainside and almost got them all killed. Yunyun says that he's forgotten about this. He hasn't heard that title in so long, he couldn't tell he was referring to him when he was calling out to the manager. The section chief, named Joan Myung-hoon, asks if he wants to lose his job the moment they get back, and Yunyun says that he's a son of a bitch. He's the nephew of a managing director at the company he worked at, and that he's lucky that he became a section chief at the age of 32 by nepotism. The others start calming him down, saying that he could not have avoided that landslide no matter what. Myung-hoon says that this bastard was dozing off, which is how they got there in the first place. Yunyun says that he definitely did, but there was a reason, and it was because Myung-hoon handed him all of his work, and he had to stay up way too late, to the point that his nose began bleeding, and that he was supposed to be the one driving the car to begin with. Myung-hoon yells, saying that this idiot got them all stranded here. Yunyun, now slowly beginning to recall his memories from 50 years ago, was so shocked back then that he apologized to Myung-hoon, thinking he was in the wrong. Then he spent the next 50 years just like that, apologizing to everybody, even when a group of bandits trampled over him and took his belongings, even when a martial artist mocked him, or when a regional official took everything he had in the name of taxes. But there was one thing he realized after years of keeping it in. Sure, he has to keep his temper in front of those that he can't handle, but that's not the case for everybody. As he stands up, he calls out to Myung-hoon, saying that he knows he's mad, but now is not the time to be pointing fingers. Myung-hoon rears back his fist for a punch, and hits him straight in the face, asking if he wants to fight. Yoon-yun says that he doesn't need to kneel down to people he can't handle, as he returns with his own punch, sending Myung-hoon flying. Everybody's surprised by this, and Yoon-yun says in his past life he's been beaten up by martial artists countless times. As he hits him one more time, he says that he was beaten up by bandits while getting herbs in the mountain, and by even more bandits on Bad Harvest, and even by officials because he couldn't pay his taxes. As he starts rocking Myung-hoon's shit on the ground, Yoon-yun says in this world of violence he was able to gain something that these people lack, and that is pure violence. And if you hit people in the eyes, their fear is amplified. After being beaten up like this, only 2 words instinctively leave your mouth. Myung-hoon starts apologizing, saying that he's sorry over and over. Yoon-yun says he doesn't have mythical talents mentioned by those transcendent individuals, or amazing martial arts that would make him famous in the world, but he does have the ability to change his fate. As Myung-hoon begins holding onto his head, manager Kim approaches him, asking how he could do that to his own colleague. Yoon-yun says that he's right. He got so angry, but he's sorry if they were shocked. He won't see these people again until he dies anyways. And he bows his head, as he was saying that he was the one driving, apologizing for that too. Kim says that Myung-hoon was being really harsh, and there's nothing he could have done. But even so, he overreacted, so he wants him to apologize to Myung-hoon directly. Yoon-yun says that he's going to continue seeing director Kim, telling him that he's right, also that he will become one of the strongest martial artists there is once he gets to learning. If he supports him as much as he can in this life, he's sure he'll get something out of it. That means he needs to get on his good side now. He stretches his hand out towards Myung-hoon, saying his reaction was not warranted, and he's sorry. Myung-hoon, though, is just pissed and goes to curse at him, but takes a good look at his face and turns his head, feeling nervous. A little later, Kim says that they should try to get out of the woods and look for a village. Yoon-yun says that's the logical thing to do, but common sense has no place in this world. Here, immortals fly wild, trying to secure their immortality, and the only rule that reigns in this land is the strong devours the weak. The people of this place will fight with swords for wealth and honor, and the forest therein is called the Ascension Path. There is no village, city, or nation anywhere remotely close. Yoon-yun tells the director that the sun is going to set soon, and they should set up a shelter somewhere safe. Kim thinks about it, saying that he's right. They suggest basing out of the car, as there's quite a lot of things they packed for the workshop. Yoon-yun says it's a shame, but they won't be able to find it. Of course they won't believe him, and he'll just let them look for the car instead of wasting his energy trying to convince them. He says they can split up. One team can look for the shelter, and the other can look for the car, and they should meet back here before it's completely dark. Later that night, there's a slight overhang with a rock and a fire beneath it, and one of the women says that she doesn't get it. They were in a landslide while in the car, so how did they end up here, yet the car is now gone? Kim says that he doesn't get it either, as they're all eating something. One of the women says that it tastes like chestnuts, and Yoon-yun says that she can eat as much as she wants, as he's got a lot. Kim laughs, saying that it's a pretty serious situation, but they're having fun, thanks to him. They knew he was this dependable even back in the company, and if he remembers correctly, Yoon-yun was really tired while driving because he had to work late yesterday. And they know it was Mingo's fault. One of the women says that he's right, and their manager is really diligent. The other 2 also agree, saying that it feels like they're camping, thanks to this cave he found. In his past life, they found this place only after being lost in the woods for hours. He tells them he was just lucky. Kim says that Buddy should just take the compliment, and Yoon-yun decides that he'll enjoy this moment, as this is the last time he can laugh with them like this. As the night slowly comes to an end. Later, Yoon-yun looks terrified, saying that he offers his greetings to the Lord of the Forest. As we see a giant fox, saying that they have quite the unique sense for humans. Despite having lived thousands of years, they have never smelled humans like them all. One of the women wakes up, wondering what's going on outside, and they all start screaming at the sight of a monster. Yun tells them they need to show their manners to the Lord of the Forest and get on their knees. The fox begins drooling, saying that every time they come across humans, they are reminded how foolish and rude they all are. And usually they would rip off all of their limbs, but since one of them seems to know how to treat them, it will forgive them this one time. With that being said, they must pay the price for being in their territory. And if one of them offers an arm, it will let them remain. In his past life, everybody saw the monster and panicked, and having angered the fox, they all ended up 1 foot in the grave, with their limbs all being chewed off. But it seems that this fox appreciates his manners this time. And it's not all of their limbs like last time. Just one person's arm is all they have to sacrifice. Even a lost arm will be healed by the cultivators who appear 2 days later. Plus, he's already prepared an herb that will reduce the pain. He stretches his hand forward, saying that he will offer his. Everybody's surprised, and the fox says that he sure does know manners, and they will try to make it as painless as possible. Yun begins screaming as blood flies everywhere, and it starts scarfing down his arm. The rest can't even watch. In pain from bleeding out, he reaches towards the herb that he found and starts eating it, saying that that shit hurts really bad. The fox says that it expected a slightly different taste, since they smell different. But it's the same as the other humans, rather he tastes awful because of all the impurities in his veins. Yun says this medieval morphine is kicking in, and he apologizes that his offering wasn't good enough. The fox says that they can stay for 7 days in the territory, and he won't have to worry about dying due to its divinity. Then it dashes off, breaking the ground beneath it, flying into the sky. The rest immediately run over towards Yun, and he says they should head inside, and he will explain. He met that fox when he left the cave earlier this morning, and the fox told him some things. They're all surprised they're in Murim, and Kim says that he never would have imagined this. Yun says they'll be safe for a week since he gave up his arm. Kim asks what they're going to do about after, and Yun says they need to give up something else. But he continuously sweats like crazy, and slowly his head starts to sink, as he tells them he's getting sleepy, so he needs to rest for a bit. They all look horrified. I'm not sure if this is the moon or a giant eye, but it's peering down at them. We hear some of the people asking Myung-hoon how he could say such a thing, since Yun sacrificed his arm. The others also say they can't agree with him, but Myung-hoon asks who wants to give up their arm and a leg in a week. Oh, and the others say they can't agree with him. Oh says that Yun is still very useful, and he's the one who gave them food and shelter. Myung-hoon says that just means they have to learn as much as they can from him in a week. Since he's already lost an arm, he won't last long, and that they should have him be the sacrifice again. As Yun staring from the shadows, overhearing their conversation, Yun says that now that he's become debilitated, Myung-hoon is trying to convince the others to cut off one of his limbs every week to give to the fox. He grabs onto one of the rocks from the cave, saying that's not exactly pleasing, and it really pisses him off. With the violence he's learned from being beaten up for 50 years, he can easily kill a modern-day man like Myung-hoon with just a single arm. As he's staring at the back of his skull while he yaps to the others, he debates killing him, but sighs, saying no while putting the rock down, and that the fear surely must have just paralyzed their minds. If he acts too cruel right now, it'll cause issues with his relationship with director Kim. Oh tells him to shut the hell up already if he doesn't want to be on the ground again. Yun laughs, saying they sure are good people, and it's just a confusing situation for everybody. The night passes by, and the next day, unlike the fox who ate his arm, the two-headed snake only requested a small amount of blood. It's the very same snake that sucked out O's blood after he lost his limbs in his last life. O says it was just a small amount, and rolls back his sleeve, putting his arm forward this time. The snake says it tastes like shit, bro, and homie needs to go get clean, and it's the worst he's ever tasted. Of course, it's because it's the blood of a 21st century worker drenched in nicotine and cholesterol, no wonder it would taste like ass. He tells Myung-hoon to come with him to pick some herbs. Myung-hoon asks if he just called him by his full name. Yun asks if he's not hungry. Myung-hoon says that he is. Yun tells him that he will explain the fruits and edible herbs, so to follow him, and that he plans to give his arm to the fox next week as well, so if he dies, someone needs to know how to survive in this forest. Myung-hoon sweats nervously, but is also excited, thanking him for the chance. Yun just wonders why he's so gullible, as the fox won't be coming back, and he'll never make use of this knowledge. Later, we hear Yun screaming at him, asking how many times he needs to tell him this, and that he has to lock in, as that fruit will get him killed, asking if he understands. He continues to teach him how to forage. A bit later, Myung-hoon sits down, saying that he needs a break as he's been digging nonstop to get herbs. Yun says this is how he was punished when he first entered the company, and he needs to finish before dusk, so to hurry up. They continue their digging until they find some ginseng, and Myung-hoon says this thing is massive, saying this is crazy. They continue their digging, asking if he sees the natural ginseng in his hand. Yun says yes, and while it does resemble ginseng, it's a yellow bamboo root. It's because of the ascension path, but they are typically as small as a pinky, and they grow to massive sizes here. It won't be of much use to the cultivators, but it's an extremely precious medicine for martial artists that they use to increase their ki, and they should help Director Kim. They spot two more. As Myung-hoon goes crazy, asking if it's okay to dig this much up, Yun says of course, and he should take off his shirt and put them in it. Some kind of storm is brewing off in the distance. Yun says it's time to head back. It's actually not a storm, but forces colliding in the air, sending out a crazy shockwave that causes Myung-hoon to fall to the floor, but it's not just Myung-hoon, as everybody else is immediately succumbing to their pressure, screaming as well. Kim looks around, wondering what's going on. As we see the Immortals flying overhead, one of them says that it's a surprise to think they'd find such uncut talent here. The one in the back tells another one called Byaho that these are his. The roided up one calls him shameless, and we learn that his name is Yagwa. Kim asks who these people are, while the cultivators continue. Yagwa says that only 3 have spiritual roots, and the rest are just normal humans. Byaho begins to stretch his hand down, creating a giant yellow orb beneath it. The first thing he does is zap the living piss out of Myung-hoon, saying it's the body of the heavenly golden thunder. Turns out Yagwa's a woman, and she says that it's her turn. She starts playing a tune, causing one of the woman's heads to start ringing like crazy, and she lets out one hell of a scream. Yagwa says that it's the ghostly yin transforming a mortal root, and she can't believe such a thing existed. Now it's time for the Roid warrior, as he lands down, telling Oh he has a unique body, and he can't believe such a unique one could exist. He will take 3 of them as disciples to the Azure Heaven Creation sect, and they have the talent to change the entire world, asking how it sounds. Oh though can't breathe due to the force, but says if he refuses, he'll die. Yagwa might be a man, I'm confused bro. It tells O to head to the Black Ghost Valley instead. Byaho chimes in, saying that they can give him the power to overturn the heavens, and they will ensure he gets all of these things within 100 years. As they continue arguing about who's going to take him, Myung-hoon is slumped out, and one of the women is getting carried by Yagwa. Kim asks if they could get them out of the forest, as they're all going to die at this rate. Byaho uncorks a gourd, telling them that mortals worry too much, as they start sucking Myung-hoon into it, asking how they got here with such worthless bodies. The Roid warrior picks up O, while saying that it seems like one of them lost an arm to the fox, and seeing the wound, he offered it up himself. He may be immortal, but he sure does have guts. Yun thanks him, and the Roid warrior says that they've captured all the beasts and monsters on the way here, and that it'll be safe for the next 10 years. Kim asks them where they are going, as they don't even know which way to get out to leave. While calling out to Myung-hoon, Oh, and the woman who we learn is Manager Kang, Yun says the same thing happened 50 years ago. No matter how hard they shouted, they were ignored and continued on their paths, but at least he had his arm healed. Kim starts panting, wondering what they're meant to do in a forest like this. As shooting stars begin to fly overhead, he asks if there's something in that direction. The next day, it began storming like crazy. In the cave, one of the women is coughing up blood. While the other tends to her, she tells Yun that she's in terrible condition, and we learn that her last name is also O. She asks if there's some kind of herb they could use to stop it. Yun says they have to wait longer, as someone might appear and heal her. As he stands staring at the mouth of the cave, footsteps begin to approach them, and a man says that mortals in the ascension path is like ants suffering among the competition between dragons. Kim is surprised, asking them who they are. They smile, saying that they are the Sea Dragon King, Seo Huil. A little later, they ask what he means by control the storm. Turns out that he's here because the storm appeared out of nowhere, and he came to look for its cause, and it seems that the lady laying on the ground must be the source of the storm. She's an ordinary woman without even a trace of cultivation, so how could she wield such overwhelming power? Additionally, she's not even doing it consciously, and it sure is strange. Yun says that they are the ones confused. Not only have they just recently got here, yet one after another powerful people like Huil is appearing and taking away his companions. Huil begins laughing hella loudly, saying this means that a few of his colleagues had extraordinary potential, and then, as if it was pre-arranged, powerful cultivators showed up and took them away. Here Huil is now conveniently appearing in front of this woman. Yun says exactly, and Huil asks if they know where they are. This place is known as Ascension Path, or the Path to Ascension. There's a key gateway that leads to the upper realm. In just a few months, a dimensional rift called the Ascension Gate will open around here. It happens once every 1,000 years, and countless high-level cultivators and spiritual beings would have already begun gathering around to ascend to the upper realm. So it's quite likely that cultivators like himself would appear. Yun says he understands, but Kim is confused, as they took the others to join their sects. If they're ascending to the upper realm, how can their colleagues join them? Huil says that he guesses it might be hard for mortals to understand. There's a technique among cultivators used to shrink large objects and store them in a set of magical tools like this. They're likely holding their sects inside them. Their goal is to ascend to the upper realm along with their entire sect when the Ascension Gate opens. In fact, he too has packed one of the undersea castles of his Sea Dragon clan inside of this very item. There are 1,800 sea dragons inside of it. Yun and Kim are surprised. I'm sure Yun is pretending, but Huil says that it sure is peculiar, because if this woman were to join, she would become something extraordinary. Kim tries to tell him to wait and calls out to her. He then drops to his knees, as his eyes begin bulging out due to just the sheer pressure of being by Huil. Huil says that he'll give her his blood and accept her as his kin. That would be the best for all of them, and one more piece of advice, they shouldn't casually ask high-level cultivators questions. Kim begins pouring blood out of his eyes, nose and mouth. Huil says that he answered because he's generous, but others would have killed them for the mere act of curiosity. The storm rages on as he transforms into a dragon, flying into the sky. The next day, with the storm gone and the sun overhead, one of the women says she can't believe that their colleagues have been kidnapped. Not only that, but there's also that avalanche out of nowhere. She starts to laugh, as if going crazy. Yun walks over, comforting her. She says that he must not be taken as well, because if he is, she won't be able to survive in this forest alone. He tells her, unfortunately, their time is up, as she begins crying immediately. Feeling the intense pressure, she drops to her knees, saying that something is coming. Kim asks her what's wrong, and birds begin flying, fleeing from the forest. She tells him that it's here. And we see some kind of cyborg beast with an old person on it, asking how mortals got to the path of ascension. They laugh, saying that when it's about to open, the surrounding space becomes unstable. They might have been caught in a spatial storm, and that they really are a genius. The old person then asks who emitted that massive pressure just now. As that was such a powerful presence, they thought a sage from the upper realm had descended, wondering if it was that girl. Kim tries stopping them, saying that she is their colleague, but gets flung away without the person even lifting their finger. Yun runs over, catching him, and they both start sliding backwards across the ground. Kim thanks Yun, but looks at the marks left behind on the ground reminiscent of his skid marks in his underwear. He realizes this is bad and tells Yun that his back is crazy bad, but Yun tells him he's okay. The old person then approaches the woman, saying that she doesn't have any spiritual root, but they can awaken it with their power, and they wonder what would happen if such a strange consciousness evolved into a cultivator's divine presence. She begins crying while looking over towards them both. The old man asks if she's really still clinging to her worldly attachments after he offered to take her in. He begins to force choke both Yun and Kim. He says that in that case, he's gonna sever those ties for her. She begs that he doesn't, and she'll do anything he asks if he spares them. He says that she must forget all of her worldly ties. She tells him she understands, as he lets go of them. He says that if he leaves them here, she'll remain attached, so he will turn them to a mortal nation nearby. They'll be randomly scattered through a dimensional rift. Not even he knows where they'll go. It begins sucking them in, and Yun reaches for the herbs, as he prepared them before they would leave. The woman cries, calling out to Yun. As they both lose consciousness, we hear people talking up their wares, trying to sell them, as they are now in some kind of alleyway. Yun opens his eyes and wonders where they are, because in his previous life, this isn't where he went, and that the immortal was telling the truth, and that this is a random area. He thought this place felt familiar, and he sees this is the place he once lived in. It is the capital of Yangguo, Siakong City. As they continue waking up, Kim tells him that he can no longer keep up with what's going on anymore. Yun says he feels the same, and Kim wishes it was all just a dream. And now it's just the two of them left behind, and he guesses he should be relieved that they weren't taken away by them. Yun doesn't know if they should be happy, and while he may have regressed in his past life, he was nothing but a powerless herb gatherer. Yun says they can't stay in this alleyway forever, and they should get out of here. Kim agrees, and they start heading throughout the city. We see that everybody's dressed entirely different from them. Kim wonders why they are whispering and talking at them, and Yun says they're saying that his clothes look funny. Kim is just surprised that he can understand them, and Yun says he shouldn't worry, as he understands a bit of Chinese. Kim forgot how bad his back was, saying that's great. But Yun lied. The language they're speaking is not Chinese. Other than the fact they use the same characters, it sounds completely different. And his past life had to endure the mockery of beggars for 2 months, just trying to learn the basics of the language. But now there's no need for that. He says they should go get some new clothes, but Kim asks how, as they don't have any money. They head to a medicine hall, and the physician is going crazy that he's letting them buy such precious herbs. Yun tells him that they're at least 800-year-old bamboo roots, and the guy says this should be worth about 15 silver ingots. Yun sweats a little nervously, saying that he's never had this much money in his past life, and tells the guy to hurry then. The physician says right away, and some time later, we see a nice new house. Kim asks if this is really where they're going to live. Yun says yes, and he's going to teach him the language of this place. Kim thanks him, and Yun says he made it seem like there's no problem, but after bribing some guys for identity plaques and buying the land, they only have 1 silver ingot left. He guesses it's because they're in the capital, but everything is so expensive. Kim sees his back bleeding through his clothes, saying that since they're in a whole new place, they should just call each other by their names, rather than their titles. Yun says that's fine with him, and Kim calls him by his first name, but we don't learn Kim's yet. Later that night, Yun says the reason he was able to get all this money was because he still deserves. They won't have a source of income if they run out of them, so they need to figure out a new way to bring money in. Kim starts thinking about how, and says they could use the silver to start a business. Yun says with all the money they can get from this, as well as his skill set from having been a director at a mid-sized company, they should be able to make a living, but that's not enough. Since he's regressed, he wants to dream bigger. We learn that Kim's first name is Young-hoon, and that he is a martial genius. After reading some third-rate martial arts books sold on the street, he became a martial master in just a few months. Once he learned the more advanced techniques, he became one of the most powerful martial artists in Jianghu. What if he were to learn advanced martial arts from the start? He might be able to shift for the birth of the greatest swordsman in Jianghu by at least 30 years, and that he'll benefit as much as he can while working with him. He tells him that this is a world of martial arts, and who knows when gangs might show up if they set up a business, and they should learn some self-defense. Young-hoon looks excited, asking how they're going to learn when people don't teach outside of their own sect. Yun says as expected of him, since he's a Muram novel nerd he knew he'd be interested. In this city, there are 7 famous sects. Among those, there are the Orthodox sects and the unorthodox sects, called the 4 Stars and 3 Demons respectively. The demon-slaying sect mainly learns sword and blade techniques. The Self-Binding Temple is a Buddhist sect, while the Suppressing Birdhouse is focused on intel. The 7 Mysteries sect has a very long history, learning all kinds of martial arts. On the other hand, there is not much known about the 3 demons. It is said that they are proficient in stealth techniques and sorcery, and do tons of illegal things. He asks which sect he thinks suits him best. Young-hoon says that it's the demon-slaying sect. Since a martial artist should wield a sword, and a man should learn blade techniques, Yun says it's fitting for the man who's called the best swordsman in his past life. Young-hoon is just curious how he knows all this, and Yun says he was eavesdropping on some martial artists talking earlier. We get a whole 3-month time skip, as some men tell him to stop before a gate. He introduces Young-hoon as his older brother, and they heard about how famous the demon-slaying sect is, and came here to learn martial arts. Murim Andrew Tate, who's been sipping a little too much of the juice while in prison, looks down at him. He says it looks like they have a decent amount of money, but he's sorry, as learning martial arts at his age will be difficult. Yun laughs, saying that they should at least let them talk to someone of a higher status, even simple self-defense would do. They finally make their way into the sect, and a guy asks if they really want to learn self-defense. Yun says yes, he wants the best one there is, while showing a whole case full of silver. The man says he could join as an external disciple, however, they won't give special treatment to those who join with donations. In addition, they will only accept one of him. Yun's surprised this is all they are willing to do, and Young-hoon asks if they are trying to rip them off, but Yun cuts him off, thanking him, saying that his brother will be the one learning. The man says they should come outside later to where all of the other disciples are gathered. Young-hoon asks what the use is if he only learns martial arts. He would have chosen a different group had he known they'd be so expensive. Yun tells him not to sweat it. It's not like he's ever been good at sports anyways, and he'll just set up a business with the remaining money and support him while he focuses on martial arts. Young-hoon says that he'll do his best, but he's old, and he doesn't know if he'll be able to do much. Yun tells him to believe in himself, as he knows he can do it. Young-hoon thanks him for the words of confidence, and another time skip of 7 months happens. At the competition held within the sect, we see a dude absolutely pissed as he's breaking his chair, because some outsider from nowhere defeated all of his beloved disciples, and the entire demon-slaying sect was in an uproar that a balding middle-aged man clapped them all. To master a martial art means to understand the true meaning that the martial art holds, and physically attune to it. A third-rate warrior who understands the meaning of a martial art can become a second-rate if they merge it into their own understanding. In order to advance from there, they need more than double the amount of understanding compared to before, and equally more time and effort, but sometimes people with enough talent seem to laugh at typical levels of understanding, and speed through many stages at once. This sect is one full of such talented martial arts. However, an outsider has come to defeat the direct disciples of that great sect. Within 7 months, he became a first-rate warrior who had completely mastered the absolute dragon saber technique of the demon-slaying sect. Who I'm assuming is the sect leader is in disbelief that he reached first-rate within just half a year of learning martial arts. On top of that, he is an outsider learning in their sect. To others, it would seem that their traditions kneel to that one man, and he tells everybody to capture him. They now have him heavily guarded within a building, and Yun is there as well, saying that because of an outsider gaining the skills befitting an elder of the sect is now in chaos. In such a ridiculous situation, he was imprisoned, and his quarter suspected of being a spy of another sect. However, he doesn't know why he was also considered a suspect when he doesn't know martial arts. He asks Young-hoon if he's worried. Young-hoon laughs, asking about what. Yun says about them suspecting him as a spy, because in the novels, they typically destroy his key core, and cut off his flow. Young-hoon says that's true, but for some reason he's thinking he's approaching the next wall, and if he crosses it, he can advance to the next stage. Yun's surprised, saying he sure is a monster, as it has not even been long since he became a first-rate, and now he's already nearing the next stage. Martial peak awaits after, sect leaders of great sects or elders are at, and they are known as absolute masters, and there's only about 1,000 of them in the whole nation. Martial arts never mention the stage after that, so martial peak is essentially the last stage you can attain by learning martial arts. And his assumptions were wrong. At this rate, the birth of the greatest swordsman in the world will be sped up by 40 years instead of 30. A whole week later, he's meditating with 3 lotuses blooming overhead. He lets out an exhale as a blue energy leaves his mouth. Yun says this is the flow of ki that only appears to peak martial artists, it's called 3 flowers gathering at the summit. Young-hoon says he's crossed the barrier, and he's not so scared of the sect leader anymore. Yun says his talent far exceeds his imagination, and Young-hoon says he's also impressed by himself. He never knew he'd have such talent, and maybe this is why he always loved martial arts novels as a kid. A man then approaches them, telling them to listen well, as they have orders from the sect leader to destroy his key core for stealing their martial arts. Young-hoon finds it amusing, but Yun puts his hands up, saying that he's not a spy. And before he can finish his sentence, they punch him in the face, as they heard the two of them speaking Korean and misunderstand it as a code-like language. Young-hoon draws his blade, slicing the man's wrist, causing him to drop his sword. Young-hoon says this was his first sect. Andrew Tate asks how dare he do this, but Young-hoon instantly cuts not just his, but everybody around them on the wrist. Realizing he's a peak-level martial artist, they begin running to inform the sect leader, leaving the room full of swords and blood. Young-hoon says he intends to visit the other sects and train, asking what he wants to do. Yoon-yun says he will accompany him, and they should go to the unorthodox sect, the dragon-fighting stronghold. Young-hoon laughs, saying that they can go ahead and meet there, as he will end the pursuit of the elders and leader. Sometime later, Young-hoon is laughing at a mountaintop, asking Yoon-yun what took him so long. Yoon-yun says he's just too damn fast, and sees his blade is covered in blood. They used to call his violence out until recently, even if it were to survive, and the world is changing them into something else. It would be great if they could return to their everyday life on Earth. If he were to regress again, he wishes it would just be to Earth instead, but it can't be helped. Now that they're here, they need to do what they can. After being betrayed by the demon-slaying sect, Young-hoon took over the dragon-fighting stronghold. 2 years after that, he toured each region to defeat various sects, and in the third year, he finally managed to destroy the emblems of every sect, and was known as the greatest martial artist under the heavens. He used that fame to unite the sects, forming the Martial Alliance. A whole 7 years later, they were as close as brothers, ignoring the gaps in their ages, and he created a martial art specifically suited for him, calling it the Severing Mountain Sword. He named it that, hoping he'd inherit its meaning of will that would even cut down mountains. If he masters it, he knows he'll be able to reach the peak. Not only that, the Dragon Vein Key method that was created alongside it. This is true first-rate martial arts, different from any second or third-rate. If there was a problem, it would just be one thing. As Yoon-yun falls to the floor, Young-hoon taps his club on his shoulder, saying that this is really unfortunate, and that Yoon-yun has absolutely no talent. Even though the best martial artist under the heavens created a martial art specifically for him, and taught it to him one-on-one, he barely made it to third-rate after an entire year. Yoon-yun says he guesses it can't be helped, and he does have some talent in medicine at least. Young-hoon says people are talented in different areas. And eventually, decades have passed, and one day he witnessed it, as there were now 5 flowers over Young-hoon's beautiful head. Yoon-yun says it's a level he'd only heard of in legends, as the 5 energies converging to the origin. Young-hoon starts to release an otherworldly glow from his eyes and mouth, and his body begins contorting and shifting as his hair grows longer and longer, and even changes color, and he releases a powerful surge of energy. Young-hoon calls out to him, and Young-hoon begins laughing, asking what has him so surprised. Now I can actually call his hair beautiful without it being ironic, as he went through a body reformation. Yoon-yun tells him that he looks younger than he does. Young-hoon laughs, asking if that's so, saying that he feels so full of life he could do anything. Yoon-yun tells him the world would be shocked at his skeletal restructuring, and Young-hoon agrees. Young-hoon says that he needs to hand the Martial Alliance over to a successor soon. Young-hoon asks if anybody fits the bill, and says that the Martial Alliance leader must have at least some skill in martial arts, but not a single one understands martial arts properly. Yoon-yun tells him that he's just extraordinary, and there's no genius like him in the world. Young-hoon looks out the window, asking if that's really what it is, saying even so, there's simply nobody who is worthy. We get another 15-year time skip. Atop one of the buildings, we see Yoon-yun explaining that it's been 35 years since he started his life on this path. He's already in his mid-60s, and he wonders what Young-hoon is up to. After a single year since his skeletal restructuring, he passed the position of alliance leader to his successor and left, and Yoon-yun really wanted to retire with him, but to manage order within the alliance, he had no choice but to stay as the strategist of the alliance until now. And that Young-hoon wished to travel around once more, maybe it's because of that, but he didn't come to his retirement ceremony. Yoon-yun sighs, saying that it's way too quiet here. He bought this manor with his retirement funds, but it's too big to live in alone. He spots somebody, asking who it is, and when he gets closer, it's none other than Young-hoon, who's laughing. Yoon-yun asks what happened to him, and where he's been instead of coming to his retirement ceremony. Young-hoon then lays on the ground, and Yoon-yun asks what's wrong with him. Young-hoon just looks up at the sky, saying that he truly believes he was blessed with a gift in martial arts. Yoon-yun tells him that's correct, saying if he's not a genius, who would be? Young Hoon says he's right, and that he has won. Among those in the area, no, rather any ordinary mortal, nobody is capable of matching his martial talent. Young Hoon laughs at him, saying ordinary mortal, as if he himself is ordinary. To everyone else, he is the strongest man underneath the heavens. Young Hoon then tells him that he fought a cultivator, saying that surely he remembers them too, from 35 years ago, when their co-workers got kidnapped by those flying monsters. Yun says of course he remembers. Monsters don't reveal themselves easily, but they lurk within the shadows of the royal palace here, manipulating the entire country of Yangguo. Ever since the Align was formed, their influence in the country grew, and they began to direct their influence onto them. Young Hoon had problems with this, but as going against their order would mean opposing the nation itself, he had no choice but to follow orders for the sake of protecting the martial alliance. Because of that, Young Hoon gave up the position of alliance leader, and he wanted to duel them as an individual. By scouring Yangguo alone, Young Hoon tells him the cultivators were truly difficult to find, even when he did locate one. He says that mortals weren't worth fighting, and used illusions or simply flew to leave, making it difficult to fight them, but 5 years ago, he was finally able to duel one. Yun asks him if he won, and Young Hoon says he did. Yun laughs, saying that if he had done that while he was the alliance leader, he would have caused a lot of trouble. Young Hoon is shaking, saying that he put his life on the line to fight a cultivator who was in the key building stage. He barely managed to make a small cut on his fingertip. Yun looks surprised, and Young Hoon continues, saying that the cultivator said that even a single scratch would count as his loss, so technically, he did win. Yun asks if the key building stage is one of the 10 strongest cultivators, and Young Hoon says no. The key building was the second to lowest stage in the world of cultivation. Using the standard of a martial artist, it's akin to being a second-rate. Yun is in disbelief, saying that's nonsense. In his previous life in this one, he knew that cultivators were ridiculous beings, but Young Hoon's martial arts undoubtedly reached the sky. He can truly walk atop nothing and utilize martial arts while suspended in air, and he's capable of cutting through entire buildings of steel as if they were tofu, but for such a genius, barely nipping the finger of a bottom-rate cultivator, it's absurd. Young Hoon says he is but a frog in a well. They cannot face the cultivators, and they are living natural disasters. Yun looks worried, and Young Hoon says even so, as he reaches into his outfit, he pulls out the guy's hand, saying that he managed to cut it off today. Yun asks if that means he's managed to surpass him, but Young Hoon says no. He placed some paper talisman on himself, and his hand grew back, and that he thinks this is the limit to his martial arts. Yun asks what he's talking about. Young Hoon says he's here to say goodbye to him today. He said he held his willpower in high regard, and that he was willing to accept him to join his cultivation sect, so he'll probably start from the bottom up there. Yun says that means he's going to surpass the mortals, and that it's impossible without a spiritual root. Young Hoon says that for a regular mortal, the stage of 5 energies converging to the origin is equivalent to the 5-element spiritual root that cultivators are naturally born with. In order to gain the trait that cultivators are born with, mortals must use their entire lives to manifest even that basic quality. Young Hoon then slices his sword, cutting through space itself, saying that he will now go and aim for a higher stage, and he hands Yun a book, saying this is his last gift towards him and to stay safe. Yun starts screaming out his name as he fades out. The book is called The Record of Transcending Cultivation and Exhausting Martial Arts. But Yun wonders where he's going without him, and so even more time has passed. As we see in old Yun, just like the start of the series, saying this is cruel. It has been 50 years since he has come to this world, and here he lay dying to a common cold, just like beforehand. And fate is something no matter how hard a human tries, they cannot escape. In the end, all that's changed is his house and his bed, and he ultimately dies on the same day. He lived his life to its limits, because he didn't want to experience the same regret in his past life. He was so busy, he hadn't even thought of marriage. Thanks to that, he was able to unite all of the martial sects here, and experience plenty of the fame and wealth the mortal world could offer. But what is this sense of emptiness? If he had struggled harder, maybe both he and Young Hoon could have reached the sky. And his body quakes into a sense of pure powerlessness. This is nothing but a disappointment, and this marked the end of his second regression. Yun opens his eyes once more, in the same forest he was in previously, the Ascension Path. He looks down, seeing that his body is brimming with energy, and regression isn't just a one-time thing. Myung-hoon once more screams at him, and starts running toward him, and swings. He says a new body full of energy, and a new opportunity is undoubtedly a good thing, though what about the things he had built up for the last 50 years? Myung-hoon gasped out, saying that he almost got them killed, and now he has the nerve to dodge. Yoon wonders if regression is actually a good thing, saying that to him, he's not too sure, and it's a curse, one that denies him the meaning of life. Sure, a couple regressions may be a good opportunity, but what if it were to go on like this forever? He would be trapped in fate's wheel, forced to wallow in the suffering of life until the end of time. Moreover, he can't meet the people he knew, and grew with, in his previous life ever again. The people in front of him now are simply beings with the same appearance as the people he knows from his past life. The Young-hoon who he thought of as his own brother, no longer exists in this world. Yoon tells Myung-hoon to calm down, asking what help being angry here would serve. Myung-hoon calls him shameless, and Yoon says in the first place, he was on driving duty that day. He warned him before he forced him to drive that he wasn't able to sleep last night, because of the work he already offloaded onto him. But also, how would he have even been able to dodge an incoming avalanche on a narrow road? So stop pointing fingers, and think about what they need to do. Myung-hoon, though, of course just looks at him with spite. Yoon calls out to Young-hoon, calling him brother, but corrects it, calling him Director Kim. I'm going to continue calling him Young-hoon. He says he'll search for a place where they can stay before the sun sets, and everyone else should go look for the car. They're way out of this forest, and when the sun sets, he'll light a fire so they should come over to it. He decides that there's no point in him making a bond with these people, as he's going to die by himself in the end, and he'd rather stay cold and distant. That night, in the same cave they were in previously, we see everybody laying down, sleeping on the floor. Yoon says that he fears the unending regression of time to come, and that his ability of infinite regression must be removed, saying maybe it would disappear if he somehow returns to Earth, seeing how he always regresses back to this moment of the ascension path. But how exactly would he even get home? He recalls that one crazy cultivator saying that when the ascension gate opens, nearby space is destabilized, so ordinary humans could have been caught up in its spatial storms. Yoon says that the ascension gate is what he's looking for, and it must be related to why he fell into this world, and maybe he can return to his original world using it. First, that means he needs to grow stronger. As an ordinary mortal, he cannot accomplish anything. He needs to become a cultivator, just like Young-hoon, and dedicate his life to it. Once he gains a longer lifespan by becoming a cultivator, he'll be able to research the Ascension Gate sufficiently, and that right now is his current and only goal, to become a cultivator and go to the Ascension Gate. The next day, out in the forest, Yoon has already dug up an herb and is devouring it, saying that strong ki is shaking in his core. He didn't know heart methods in his previous life, so eating these yellow bamboo roots wouldn't have done anything. But if he uses the dragon vein ki method that Young-hoon made for him, then he can break through his blocked ki passageways. As we see him doing his best to circulate, after a while, he's sweating, saying that it's not easy to cure a body soaked in preservatives from fast food and stress. Later in the day, we see a bunch of wood carvings on the ground, as he is carving a stick to make a makeshift sword that he can practice with, saying that this should do it. He then begins practicing his martial arts, the same ones that Young-hoon made for him. In his past life, he was just an average second-rate martial artist, but since he wasn't practicing near the end of his life, his skills have dulled. But that's not a bad thing. As he stares at a tree, he swings, using the severing mountain sword, actually managing to cut it, saying that he has it all in his head, so growing his skills is a matter of time. Young-hoon, surprised upon witnessing this, asks what that was, asking how he slashed a tree with a wooden stick, and what the hell is up with his strength. Yoon says that this is the man who will lead him to become a cultivator, and asks him if he wants to learn the technique. Young-hoon asks if he really can, but then we hear the wolf laugh as it crushes the tree, and starts to snarl at them, calling them filthy humans, asking how dare they play around in front of the master of this forest. Yoon says that he honestly forgot about him. We see blood flying as the wolf is eating his arm. Yoon says all he can do now is to apply pressure to his nerves to ease the pain, as the fox bites away at his arm, and that he is weak. In both his first life, and his second, he can't help it. It then skips completely past the second regression, which is a little disappointing, understandable I guess. As we see, it's his third regression, and everybody's trying to get him to stop as he's walking towards the wolf once more. he gives us a recap of his second life. Even though he vowed to attain the level of 5 energies converge to the origin, and become a cultivator, despite learning under the best master for over 100 years, he barely managed to make it to become a first-rate martial artist. As he grabs onto his arm, he starts ripping apart at it with his bare hands. He says that his talent is worthless compared to that of the people here, but despite that, regardless of whether it takes a millennia or 10 times that, as everybody screams, he hands his arm up to the fox, and he says that he won't give up. The fox laughs, saying that a human who knows their manners and offers up a sacrifice of their own accord sure must be delicious, and they can't wait to have a taste. Yun says he'll give his arm up any time until the day he surpasses its strength. After eating his arm, the fox left, allowing them to stay here. Without regard for his co-workers, he continued to swing his sword alone in the forest. Aside from when the cultivators arrived to heal his arm, and kidnap his co-workers, he swung his sword without food or rest. He finally stopped on the 4th day, and says that he has a question for the Sea Dragon King. Huil asks what it is, and Yun says he believes that he intends to take their manager, and we finally learn that her name is Haiseo, and he says that she is a mortal who lacks a spiritual root, and regular mortals can only live for up to 100 years at most, so he wonders what use he has with her. He says that he is quite informed about cultivators for a mortal, but he should not worry. When she accepts his blood, she will awaken to a spiritual root befitting her talents. Yun then asks if they could also have the opportunity, as they are from the same lands, and they might also have some special powers he could be interested in. Huil laughs, telling him to listen. As he starts releasing pressure, he says he'll warn him for his own sake, that he should try to avoid making demands to high-ranked cultivators like him. They've lived through dozens of millennia, and have seen and learned countless things he could not even dare comprehend. As he is one of the kinder ones, he'll forgive him, but certain freakish cultivators would be more than willing to crush him like an insect for making eye contact. The storm starts raging violently as he turns into a dragon, carrying Haiseo away. And the next day, when the other cultivator came, we learn that the woman's name is Yun, and he says that she is born without a spiritual root, so how is she able to become his disciple? The man laughs, saying that this is a priceless pill that awakens one to their spiritual senses, and a mortal can gain the opportunity to become a cultivator if they consume this. Yun says this means there are other ways to become a cultivator. He then says that it's also possible for mortals to train in martial arts and gain the 5-element spiritual roots, but that path takes far too long, and results in a very mediocre outcome, and this is the best way. But now that he has no business with the two of them, he sends them away in the portal once more. Yun yells, telling him to wait. And when he opens his eyes, he sees himself on a tree. He looks up, spotting the southwest of Yangguo. He says his previous life was spinned, just like his second one, where he and Young-hoon traveled throughout the country, and after spending almost 100 years traveling, he knows every place like the back of his hand. He tells Young-hoon to wake up, and explains that he woke him up, and brought him to the nearest city, and explained the situation to him. While he seemed quite confused, he soon appeared to accept this new reality, and they arrived in Hobiak City, and sold the herbs of the Ascension Path to buy a small house. Yun taught him the language, as well as the Severing Mountain blade which he had created in his second regression, by modifying the Severing Mountain sword in order to make it better suit the weapon he used. Yun looks disappointed, saying this is very unmotivating. He reached the level of 3 flowers within 3 months of learning martial arts, while someone like him can spend 2 whole lifetimes training, and barely reach first rate. Young-hoon laughs, saying that he thinks he could beat Yun now. Yun says that this man is not the same Young-hoon he considered to be his own brother, and that he is mentally several times younger than him. In terms of mental age, he'd be as old as Director Kim's grandfather, and he shouldn't accompany him in this life. Yun tells him from now on they should begin living separately, and hands him a book. Young-hoon asks why, and if he did something wrong, wondering what the reason is. Yun says the reason is simple. In his first regression, he became the Martial Alliance leader, but despaired after losing to the cultivators. His second regression wasn't much different. He made the same book, but even a newer one, as well as fighting the same cultivator, but he was unable to surpass the cultivators, and gave up, leaving the path of martial arts and becoming a cultivator. The same thing will definitely happen in this life. He no longer wishes to witness Young-hoon's face filled with despair. He says he wants to tour the lands, and improve his own skills. Young-hoon asks how he's going to live on his own without him, and Yun says his martial arts should be more than enough to go off of. He's taught him how to communicate right, and fight. He's a martial artist at the martial peak level, so he doesn't need to worry. Young-hoon says this means he must part with someone who shares his homeland once again, and Yun tells him that they should promise to meet back here at this house every 2 years. Young-hoon thinks about it, and it turns out he convinced him. And then Yun left. He heads into the city, and a man tells him to halt, asking what brings him to the Hall of 8 Respects. Yun bows, saying that he has come to request the duel. The man laughs, saying that one simply cannot just barge into the Hall of 8 Respects. And as the man speaking, Yun quickly unsheathes his blades, slicing forward, cutting open his uniform, and his spear. As his spear starts to fall apart, and his clothes, the man looks shocked, and Yun says he plans to grow stronger, and then resheathes his blade, asking the man if he really looks like he's a nobody to him, as he plans to do whatever it takes. Inside of the sect, a woman welcomes Yun, saying that the sect leader is waiting for him. As they walk down a hallway, he sees the sect leader standing on a training arena. A lot of the disciples are all watching, and a man says that he was wondering who their guest might be when he heard a first-rate martial artist was here, but to think it would be such a young man. Yun introduces himself, saying that he greets the Hall of a Respect sect leader. The guy says that his ki is undoubtedly formidable. Yun says his is as well, and he wants him to bestow upon him some of his teachings. The sect leader releases his weapon, which is like some form of a multi-section weapon. Yun readies himself, and the sect leader says that he will make the first move. He leaps forward, and Yun dashes sideways, dodging the attack. The man then uses his ki to wrap it around the weapon, changing direction towards Yun's head. Yun watches carefully, and then parries it with his sword. The disciples are surprised that he deflected the sect leader's 9-chuck with his sword. I guess that's what they've called it. The sect leader says, seeing his reaction time, he's reached the level of becoming one with a sword, and he's at the late stage of first rate. Yun says he can tell he's also completely merged his martial arts with his weapon as well, and he's learned much from that single move. The sect leader is amused, saying that he can't believe he's at the same level as him, despite being such a young age, and he's really a genius. Yun laughs in his head, saying that's not even a compliment to him. He knows that it may seem impressive that he's reached a level of prowess that would take others decades to reach in his late 20s, but he is just one of the many talentless fools commonly found in the world, and the sky never gave him such talent. Yun though takes the praise, and says that despite his lack of talent, he was able to develop a level of martial prowess equivalent to those of geniuses, and that regression is the only opportunity for him to use it. He decided to act as a genius for now, saying that he will use sword energy from here on out. The sect leader says that he should as well, and he will take things seriously. Yun comes in with the mountain severing sword first form, transcending peaks. The sect leader dodges sideways. Yun goes with the second form, entering mountain, following it with the third form, ascending vein. The sect leader continues, he blocks the attacks, and then starts to imbue even more ki into his 9-chuck. He and Yun start going blow for blow with one another, as sparks fly. The sect leader says that his sword art is monstrous, and he can't get through it at all. He then goes for a low sweep, which Yun leaps over. Yun returns with the 7th form, called Deep Mountain, thrusting forward rapidly. The sect leader dodges to the side, but one of them grazes his cheek. The disciples can't believe that the sect leader is losing the tempo, but note how Yun's sword is becoming faster as he goes through his forms. Yun goes into the 11th now, called Cliff Edge, and he destroys the arena. The disciples recognize that it's not just his speed, but his power as well is increasing. Yun then runs in with a diagonal swing, which the sect leader blocks with a segment of his 9-chuck. His hands begin ringing from the force, and he realizes this is bad. Yun says it's time to end this, as it's the 12th form, called 7 Lights, emerging peak. He leaps up into the air, and as if some of the cuts slash through reality itself, we see purple particles emanating from them as he cuts the sect leader's weapon into pieces. The disciples are speechless as the sect leader falls to his knees, saying that he has lost. Yun bows, thanking him for the opportunity, then walks away from the arena. As he's heading out of the sect, there are tons of people watching him, but nobody's saying anything, and Yun says that there's no backlash, and that the Hall of 8 Respects is an orthodox sect well known for following a strict moral code, and he should visit the unorthodox ones the next time. With this tour of travels, he will make sure to reach the martial peak in his life. He ended up touring 4 more medium-sized sects in Sealkyong City. Among them he lost to the Enryu sect and the Huiyang sect, but was victorious at the Gaesu and Yuguang sects. Now he's at the Hujing sect, fighting one of the disciples as we see him shatter his sword, sending him flying backwards towards the elder. The guy's eyes start to roll back to his head, and the elder laughs, saying that he's the young first-rate who's been challenging sects around the city, and that he's seen his skills well. Yun says that he was able to learn much, and the guy says it's now time for him to face off against 10 of their elders. These dudes are all copy and pasted type shit. They look scary though. Yun asks if this is how unorthodox sects exact revenge, as he thought the duel ended with his victory, and he never even heard of a consecutive duel, especially not one where the challenger would fight 10 on 1. The elder hits him with that suspense really? Saying that he's heard of it now though, and it's called the Bonnie Blue method. Yun says this dude is old and sly, and that if he lets his devious ways be known to the other sects, the name of their sect will fall to the ground. The old man says there's no problem. He will receive a simple scratch while dueling at their sect, and that scratch will become infected, and he'll fall into illness, and that they will have taken great care of him, and that people will believe that despite their best efforts, he passed away. And that it's not like a dead man can possibly refute their words. Yun says he's even more crazy than he thought they would be. Yun tells him to attack then, as he accepts this ridiculous duel. He says it's time for him to finally get some real fighting experience with his life on the line. Later that night, in another city, at an inn, we hear laughter erupting. A drunkard is talking about a young martial artist that went to challenge the Hujing sect. It sure is an unfortunate end for him. The other patron agrees, saying that it's his fault for challenging an unorthodox sect to a duel. The general consensus is that when you're young, it makes you naive, and they all seem to believe that the world will go as they will it. Everybody thinks he's just killing himself by going to fight them, because while they are a sect in name, they're practically a group of bandits. He's probably buried by now, but we see his bloody shoe enter the inn. One of the workers greets him before seeing him soaked in blood, and Yun asks for 1 bowl of noodles. The dude says, certainly, telling him to come in, and all the guys talking shit are just making oh faces, and they looked afraid to even look at him. That night, as Yun walks past them, he says that those guys were crazy, and he almost died. Not only was it 10 to 1, but they even poisoned their weapons. Thank God he learned medicine of the highest level during his time as the Alliance's strategist. If he hadn't eaten the curing pill and stimulant he made beforehand, he would have died. Also, he had to fight every single lackey of the sect as well, as the old dude was absolutely furious. He yelled, getting everybody to charge into the room, and they were using bows and spears. Yun fought like an animal in order to survive, and as he's enjoying his noodles, it's proof that he did. He ended up killing the sect leader by stabbing him in the chest. He cut the survivors' tendons to cripple them for life, so they won't even be able to think about revenge. He finishes his bowl, saying that overdosing on a stimulant is making it impossible for him to relax right now, as his hands are all jittery, and he's definitely not going to be able to sleep at all for the next few days. So he's going to challenge an orthodox sect to a duel. As he grabs his sword, he leaves, proceeding on his journey. This ridiculous feat of him defeating an entire sect and then enjoying a simple bowl of noodles causes his name to be spread among the masses. As gossip roamed all throughout the city, soon people gave the said crazy martial artist a befitting title. They called him the one with infinite fighting spirit. While Yun lacks talent, his goal to the martial peak is as far as ever, and this is why he must continue his fight. He even weaved through life and death to inch closer and closer. For a talentless man to break the wall, he must go mad. If one lacks talent, they must embrace insanity, and that is the only way a talentless man can catch up to a genius. And so he went through various places within the country, and fought several duels a day, whether they were orthodox or unorthodox sects. And after 5 whole years, at the manor they were promised to meet at, we see dust getting kicked up. Yun is in the 14th form of the Severing Mountain Sword, called the Key Mountain Flowing Heart. As we see his sword vibrating with a circle around it, he says that sword key in the form of silk is something that can only be used by those who have a soul. Even attempting to form it for a moment places a ridiculous burden on his head, but if he doesn't do this, he can't possibly dream of catching up. As we see Young Hoon coming in from above, Yun blocks the attack, but it disperses his ki, sending him flying down to the floor, and he even makes a crater. he says that all of his sword ki was destroyed in a single strike. Young Hoon laughs, saying he had high hopes from hearing about him, but he still has a long way to go, and he thinks that he's clearly won this time, as he is now the strongest man under the heavens. Yoon Yun says that he truly has incredible talent, congratulating him, saying that he's grown even stronger than last year. As he's hit skeletal restructuring after only 5 years, Yoon Yun wonders what he's been doing in that time, saying he's still only a first-rate martial artist, and that talent truly brings people to their lowest. Yoon Yun asks what brought him here, and Young Hoon says they agreed to meet every 2 years. After attaining the 5 energies, converging to the origin, and visiting great sects, he realized one thing. He is the strongest man in all of Yangguo, and no one can withstand more than a single strike of his. Yoon Yun wonders why he's just now noticing this, and Young Hoon continues, saying that he was thinking, as the strongest man under the heavens, that he was planning on creating a sect or organization of some kind, and he wanted to offer Yoon Yun a seat. Yoon Yun says he's fine though, as he prefers how he is now. As he always ends up with this obsession for becoming the alliance leader, if he accepts the offer, he'll end up working himself to the bone as the vice leader or strategist in this life as well. In order for him to reach the martial peak, every second is precious to him. After saying that, it would be hard for him to meet after he starts his organization. He began trying to convince him by saying he could help with his training through one-on-one lessons. Yoon Yun says no matter what offer he makes, he's not taking it, and Young Hoon looks sad. But from Yoon Yun's perspective, he's got his teachings from multiple lives, and it hasn't done anything, and what he needs is real-life experience. In his past life, Young Hoon told him that once he enters the late stages of first rate, he should endeavor to experience as much real combat as possible. So this life, he decided to merely watch his saga from afar, and continued on his own endless journey for battle. And after 20 years of countless duels, Young Hoon comes back to the pavilion and enters, saying that Yoon Yun looks quite pale, and Yoon Yun says that he finally realized that his talent is truly one forsaken by the heavens. Bro got it rough. Young Hoon says that despite training endlessly, he still hasn't been able to raise his progress. Yoon Yun looks down at his shaky hand, saying that his understanding of sword energy now far exceeds that of other first-rate martial artists, and he's still unable to last more than 3 exchanges against a peak-level martial artist. Young Hoon says that's strange, as he's nearly become one with the sword, but he still hasn't reached the martial peak, and someone with as much fighting experience as him should easily be able to do it. Yoon Yun, though, understands that this is just the extent of his talent. As his nose begins pouring blood, he says that this is as much as he can maintain, and it's only half a day, but maybe if he can maintain his sword energy for an entire day, he'll be able to find the path. Young Hoon wishes him the best, and hands him a book, saying that this is the insight he gained from fighting a core formation stage cultivator. He tried to buy as much time for himself by understanding his moves, and managed to escape successfully. Yoon Yun says it's as thick as his last 2 books, and he can't believe that the insight needed to escape from a core formation stage cultivator was this great. The same words that Young Hoon said in his previous lives are echoed once more, that they are living natural disasters. Obviously, he needs a deep understanding in order to escape from the wrath of nature. Yoon Yun says he sees, and he will preserve and pass it down to the next generation. Young Hoon thanks him, and says that he's going to go find a core formation stage cultivator again, and he prays that they meet each other alive, and he gives him a hint to reaching the martial peak. He says that he should try to take in every single piece of spatial information in his mind at all times. Yoon Yun asks what he means by this, and Young Hoon says that he needs to keep how he stays aware of his surroundings in order to utilize them during real combat, and he should try to make that something he'd typically only utilize in combat, stay active at all times. Yoon Yun asks how he could even do that, as just maintaining sword energy all day makes his head feel like it'll split open, but now he needs to stimulate his surroundings at all times, wondering how he knows his head won't just explode. But he says there must be a reason that the strongest martial artist would assign him such a task. From that day forth, he began to keep aware of every single piece of information his eyes would give him, and remember the spatial position of every object. As he's going through the city, he's keeping an eye on everything, same as when he's going through a forest, and we see him panting, and he says it's been 5 years since he began to maintain his sword energy and spatial tracking. He feels dizzy, and being aware of everything that enters his sight is a very dizzy feat. It's not just that, he started surpassing his visual information, and he's tracking audible information now as well. He doesn't even know if he can fight in this state, as there aren't any more sects for him to go fight. In the past 30 years, He's traveled throughout the entire country, visiting various sects from medium to large, and now there isn't a single one left within the country for him to visit. He currently has resorted to capturing bandits and living off of their bounties. He has to fight against enemies that would use any dirty method while he's in such a lightheaded state, so he doesn't know if he can survive. But this is a path that he chose, and he will not run from it. We see the bandit boss appearing, saying that he's going to die here, but Yun says even if he does, he will continue to walk this path. As we see blood flying, it jumps to 15 years later, and he says that it seems that Young-hoon has survived. Even though he's grown old, Young-hoon is still young, saying that once again he has. Yun explains that it's been 45 years since he regressed. He has now reached a stage where he is proficient at processing and remembering, not only with sight and hearing, but also taste, touch, and smell at an advanced level. But that was all. He still hasn't been able to become a peak-level martial artist, and he can't believe that an entire life's worth of training isn't enough. Young-hoon tells him that the cultivators have put a bounty on him, as his name is spreading amongst them, and the 2 core formation stage cultivators set a trap to ambush him, and he barely escaped, but he managed to make a single scratch on one of their cheeks. Yun says that he seems to have gained great insight again this time, and Young-hoon says it's nothing like that. It's impossible to defeat a core formation stage cultivator. If he can't escape, he'll end up as a corpse, and he's been having some thoughts recently, that 5 energies converging to the origin may be the limit that a martial artist can aim for, and he suspects that the author of Record of Gazing Cultivation and Exceeding Martial Arts ended up arriving at the same conclusion as him. Which is true, because he's the one who wrote the book, and I guess Yun gave it to him without telling him he wrote it. Yun says that he sees his own self in him. While he undoubtedly has a talent gifted to him by the heavens, Yun has the opposite, as his talent is forsaken by the heavens. He wonders why he relates to his situation right now so much, when the 2 of them are polar opposites when it comes to talent. Yun says he's stumped as to why he's unable to reach the next level, and Young-hoon says despite successfully emulating sword energy and having the vision of a peak-level martial artist, he's still unable to become one, and he has no idea what could be the case. Young-hoon asks if he would like to go through a duel and give some feedback. Yun says he would, and that night they head outside, and we see a giant explosion. We see a giant shockwave, and Yun asks just what the hell is his problem. Young-hoon says he doesn't understand, as he should have become a peak-level martial artist ages ago. Yun asks what that even means, as clearly he hasn't, while spitting up blood. Young-hoon says this is strange, wondering why this is happening, saying that even if he lacks talent, he should still be there. He then thinks about it, saying maybe he lacks a catalyst. Yun asks what he means, and Young-hoon says it's like a strong sense of drive or emotion, an event that might get him to exceed the limits of his concentration and surpass his talent. This makes Yun snap and lose his reasoning, and he asks what the hell he means by that, as he's done nothing but wield the sword for the last 50 years. There's no way he can get more desperate than he is. He's struggled his entire life, desperately trying to escape being a first-rate martial artist. He's activated all of the key flows in his body, and he even holds his sword in his sleep and keeps his sword energy active. He's reached the point where he's processing and memorizing every bit of information, even his dreams. He falls to the floor screaming at the heavens, asking why they won't show him the next stage. He says that he knows how it looks for a 70-year-old man to curse the heavens for his fate, but he can't help it. He's only pursued the sword for his entire life, and he doesn't have a clue what the next stage is like. Young-hoon watches him, feeling defeated, and then tightens the grip on his blade before swinging, cutting into a tree, saying that he's created martial art during their duel that should fill in his weak points. He knows this is no proper reassurance for his needs, but he hopes learning it will help him calm himself. It's called the Mountain Lord Martial Arts, and the Transcending Peak Steps. Once again, Young-hoon disappears like nothing's ever happened, and 5 years later, Yun says it's been 50 years since his regression, and he doesn't have a lot of days left to live. He wonders if Young-hoon's passed away, saying they haven't met in some time, and that this must be their fate. Both of their talents just end here. Yun says no matter how much they struggle, mortals can't escape the fate the skies have set for them. Young-hoon, though, does appear behind him, asking what he's talking about. We see him missing both of his arms, looking horrible, and Yun asks what the hell happened to him, saying that he's in a grave state, and he should go get the medical tools from his house. Yun's coat then starts to get pulled up as he and Young-hoon dodge and attack narrowly. Yoon just wonders how he's grabbing him when both of his arms were chopped off. Yoon then tells Yoon to look, as a cultivator is chasing them, and this is the price he paid for blowing up the arm of a core formation stage cultivator. He starts laughing like a maniac, saying that he has finally made a core formation stage cultivator take meaningful damage. He has witnessed the stage past the 5 energies converging to the origin. What was thought to be the final stage of a martial artist, he can finally surpass it. Yoon looks surprised. As we see an orb floating above Yoon's head, he tells Yoon to look, as he risked his life and burned away his life force to get to this point. Yoon says that his enhanced ki. Yoon says that he was able to burst a core formation cultivator's arm, thanks to this, as we see it flying backwards, completely annihilating Yoon's manner. Yoon tells him to watch, as this is the result of his life's work in training martial arts. Yoon starts crying because this dude just blew up his damn house, saying that he invested all the money he gathered for 50 years while living as the infinite fighting spirit into this house. Yoon though laughs, telling him to look, as he has run far and wide to show him this because he decided that he would leave his will to him. Yoon, at that moment, spaced out, and rage filled him, but he calmed himself down and watched his martial arts performance. The place where a 3-story building had been exploded without a trace. It's a good thing that he didn't have any servants in the house, otherwise hundreds of them would have died with that attack. The blade traces he can see in there from the few remains there are, show how much effort he has put in. He can also see that the ball of enhanced ki just then was a concentration of thousands of blade energies. That is an unbelievable force. It's stronger than any martial art he has shown him until now. Yoon says this is how he was able to do it, and before he had to ambush or assassinate the key building stage cultivators for a chance, but now he can fight them head on. As they start falling, Yoon screams, and they plummet down into the forest. We see the landing was taken really roughly, as it shot, breaking a bunch of trees. Yoon's voice starts to grow weak, and he tells Yoon not to forget these techniques, as these are his life's realizations. He then says he should pass on his martial arts to future generations. Yoon says he heard him, so stop talking, as his life is at stake here. The cultivator then arrives, saying that he found him finally, calling him the ultimate martial spirit, saying that this is a terrible spot to run to. Yoon looks up as the cultivator calls out to him, saying that a civilian should get out of the way, as he is a criminal who has committed unspeakable crimes to the cultivators. Yoon asks if he is going to punish him, and the cultivator asks if he is his acquaintance. Yoon starts hauling cheeks while also grabbing onto Yoon's cheeks, and the cultivator clicks his tongue, saying this is pointless, wondering if he did not hear about the cultivators from the ultimate martial spirit, but laughs it off, saying that he will think of it as entertainment, telling him to run the best he can. As he shoots out some purple aura, Yoon turns in horror to see that it is actually an army of corpses running towards him. Yoon says he is too old for this shit, and asks if the cultivator gave him the nickname of Ultimate Martial Spirit, saying it is unique, and that they both have spirit in their name, but they are both being chased by the undead, and that sure is strange. He tells Yoon to stay awake and respond to him. As one of the corpses gets close and stretches his hand out towards them, Yoon swings, cutting its head off. He then kicks it backwards, playing some human bowling ball, saying that he should be the one running with him on his back, as he is going to die from exhaustion, wondering why he had to get his arms cut off. The undead did not stop and continued to chase, but Yoon just grit his teeth and kept running. Mornings went, and night passed. He wonders how many times the sun rose and fell, as he was at his limits, gassed out, and he ended up atop a cliff, saying that it is so high up. The cultivator says that is shocking, that he, a mere civilian, managed to withstand the undead for 3 days and nights. However, he cannot run anymore, as he sees his legs shaking. He tells him it is futile, and that the ultimate martial spirit is long dead. Yoon says that he knows, and he is a physician after all. The cultivator then asks why he was running, as he is only interested in the ultimate martial spirit, and he doesn't care about him. He could have just abandoned the corpse and run off. Yoon starts laughing. The cultivator asks what is so funny. Yoon says that due to all the martial arts he has been training in his entire life, he was able to reach this point despite being void of talent. It is all thanks to Yoon's teachings. He is someone from his hometown, as well as his martial mentor. So if he wants to take his master's head, he will have to take his first. The cultivator realizes that he is foolish, saying that it seems mortals forgot how to fear the cultivators, wondering if it is just because he doesn't know any better, or if he has no fear due to him being old. He says that he will show him that cultivators have the power to show him pain worse than death, as two hands begin flying towards him. They go to his sides, and Yun realizes they weren't going for him, as they attach onto Young-hoon's body. Turns out they were his arms. Yun realizes what is going on now, and the cultivator says that a parasite should learn and pay the price for looking down on him. Yun turns with tears in his eyes, calling him evil, and tells the ultimate martial spirit to kill his disciple. Young-hoon starts roaring as a corpse, and swings. Yun dodges under, asking how dare the cultivator defy a dead man's legacy like this. The cultivator just has a smug expression, and I can't wait to see one of the future lives where he knocks it off. Yun dodges the attack, saying thankfully he isn't able to use martial arts. He's merely attacking him using the sheer power the cultivator surged into him, but just that sheer force and speed is so great that it's hard for his old body to withstand. As he starts getting pressured, he says this is really bad. It's already an incredible disgrace to point his sword at Young-hoon who is already dead, but if there's nothing else he can do, he should end it as soon as he can. He's regretful, and apologizes as he uses the 21st form of the Severing Mountain sword called Heavenly Lake. Back when Yun was learning it, Yun says the name's interesting as all the other forms' names are related to some mountain peak or valley, so why is the 21st form named after a lake? Young-hoon is also curious, and Yun says that since he's the one who created it in his past life, maybe he would understand his own thinking. Young-hoon says it reminds him of the Heavenly Lake atop Mount Baekdu. Yun asks if that's really it, and Young-hoon says yeah, and maybe this world has a lake similar to the same one atop the mountain, or maybe the name was also created by people from Korea like them. Yun laughs, saying maybe so. Yun explains that the Heavenly Lake is a lake that reflects the sky itself. The Heavenly Lake holds the view of the skies within its surface, but its nature remains unchanged. The sky, symbolized in the teachings of the Severing Mountain sword, refers to the martial arts he duels with, and the lake which encompasses the sky's view refers to his single strike as he unsheathes his blade, rapidly sending out an attack, knocking Young-hoon backwards. Yun then resheathes it, saying that the Heavenly Lake of the Severing Mountain absorbs all of the energy flowing in the opponent's veins into his sword energy for a single moment, and ends up launching the enemy away whilst their energy gets trapped in his blade. It's a move he can use because he's a first-rate physician and a master of understanding the 8 key veins. It is a move only he can perform because this martial art was created specifically for him, and if Young-hoon's corpse remains intact, he may continue to be used as a servant, which is why he must not let a single piece of him remain. As he will use the energy churning within his sheath to combine all of the Severing Mountain sword forms into a single attack, he starts rapid firing through them. Using the first form, he swings as it starts cutting through Young-hoon's corpse. He then continues his chain, flowing all the way up until the 6th form as we see 6 attacks flying out. Young-hoon starts getting cut up into pieces, and the corpse lets out another groan. Yun says he needs to cut him completely so that the cultivator may not defile his legacy further. The cultivator, realizing this is bad, starts to pour more energy into Young-hoon, calling Yun an insect. Young-hoon starts bulking up, POV you eat nothing but McDonald's thinking your dirty bulk is working. Yun says the cultivator has given him even more power and speed, and he needs to dodge, but wait, what use is there in him dodging, as his life will end soon, and he's already as good as dead. So he will use this moment to ensure that his master is no longer defiled. Yun, instead of running away, charges straight towards Young-hoon, saying that he will burn it all, and he will die here. Young-hoon raises his hand up into the air, and Yun says that he can't die until after he accomplishes this goal. He starts bleeding from his mouth, saying that the area around him, the noises, the smells, the humidity, and the temperature, and even the blood that's wrapped around his tongue, he starts sensing everything, saying that his brain feels like it'll explode, and he might as well let it. His eyes begin burning violently as he holds up his sword, letting out a scream. He says until his brain burns to a crisp. But then, his brain feels like it explodes, his eyes open widely, and instead of accepting the pressure formed from putting his life on the line as per past experiences, he wonders what's going on, if he's become delusional. As time feels like it's slowed down, he starts to see little strings in front of him coming from Young-hoon's hands, showing the exact motion he's about to swipe. Yun decides to trust in it, and dodges the attack. He then sees a blue line from his sword showing him the path to follow, and he does. As he slowly traces the line, he swings, cutting into Young Hoon's corpse with ease. Yoon then realizes that this is the vision of a martial artist who has reached the martial peak. He sees Young Hoon's corpse smiling, and realizes that even though their talents, one blessed by the heavens, and the other forsaken, were polar opposites, the reason they were so similar was because they were both ultimately struggling to escape the fate given to them by the heavens. As Yoon dashes past Young Hoon, we see he actually managed to follow the lines, cutting him into pieces. It reminds me of the main character of Tsukihime. Yoon says there is no genius or dunce, there are only two men who struggled against their fates for their whole lives, one's dead, and another on death's door. He hears Young Hoon asking him if he's going to stop here, and Yoon says of course not. As he jumps up into the air, he uses the 15th form to cut the cliff into pieces, and within the debris, Yoon accepts his fate. The cultivator screams, realizing that he just ruined his perfect specimen, and Yoon says even a cultivator won't be able to defile his corpse any longer, and he hopes Young Hoon can rest in peace. And so, he finally attained the level of martial arts he had desired for so long, and put an end to this life of continuous struggles. And that was how he lived his fourth regression. It's now his fourth regression, and he opens his eyes. He says he fought until the very end. He did nothing but fight for most of his life, but finally it paid out, because he ascended, since he reached the peak realm, something he had yearned for all of his life. Young Hoon yells, asking what he's yapping about, and blames him for them being in this mess once more. Yoon looks at the red line, and dodges the attack. He says that he can see exactly where his next move will land even with his eyes closed, and in the past he could still dodge his attacks with his eyes shut, but that was because of decades of experience, and it let him predict his movements. This is different, because it's foresight, and that's why now, no matter how many first-rate masters gather, they can't defeat a single peak master. When you can clearly see the direction trajectory of a weaker opponent's attack, there's no way a first-rate could ever hope to beat someone at this realm. And this time his instincts are telling him that the blue line marks the opponent's opening, which is the optimal path for his strike, and the red lines show the enemy's attack route, and the blue that follows it is the perfect counterpath. Because there's such a wide gap between them, there are so many openings he can choose from. His nose begins bleeding, and he says it feels like his brain's on fire, wondering if using this vision is overloading his brain. He still dodges another attack, and hits him with one of them Judy chops at the back of the neck. Young Hoon falls onto the floor, and Yun runs over. As Yoon's holding his head, Yun asks if he's alright. He says that he didn't even use it for more than a second, yet the pain is this intense, and he wonders what the problem is. After calming everybody down, he led them into the same cave as usual, roasted some berries, and got them to sleep, but he had other plans, as that night he went out, took a stick, and started practicing in the forest. We see him cutting a leaf, and he says that even with a dull stick, not imbued with ki, he split a leaf very cleanly. It seems that the peak realm vision automatically reads the opponent's battle route, and divides it into the blue and red lines inside of his mind. When he uses it, he can read every movement of his opponent, and strike along the perfect path to their weak point. That's why in his last life, Young Hoon called his constant sensory amplification mimicking the peak realm. By maximizing all 5 senses, he could forcibly calculate the opponent's combat route. He just sits there, watching all the blue paths come off of a stick. He takes a second, closes his eyes, envisioning them being enemies, and starts to follow the path with his eyes closed, cutting each and every one of them into pieces, and he does this all the way until the next morning. And he starts laughing to himself, saying that with this he's finally confirmed that he is a peak master now at the start of this life. It feels like his brain is going to burn out. After finding and consuming 8 yellow bamboo roots in the area, and cultivating with the dragon vein key art, this time he can maintain the vision to nearly an hour and a half. Now that he's reached the peak realm, there's no need to sell the bamboo roots anymore, and money isn't the issue, so he can handle that himself. So for the remaining ones, he heads back to the cave, and decides to give them to Young Hoon. He says he has 6 volumes worth of his insights from his past life, and the secret verse he left before dying all in his head. If he passes this on, then he will surpass the one from his previous life, and since he's already attained the peak realm, the level of instruction he can receive from him will be incomparably higher than before. He still has no clue how to advance to the next realm, but unlike these people here, the only path available to someone like him is endless training. If he keeps using the vision until his brain itself adapts to it, then he'll be able to overcome the pain, and that should be his first goal, and ultimately it'll help him lead to the 3 Blossoms Crown Peak, the so-called extreme limit of the peak realm. And just like the previous ones, the fox came and he offered his arm to it, but he was curious about something, and he wondered if he could see the red thread in the fox as well, but when he looked it was nothing but pure red. This caught him off guard, and he says that means he's unable to win. It bites off his arm, and he wonders how the entire world could just be filled with this red light. Several days later the cultivators returned, and he once again could only wear a dumbfounded expression, because it was the same for them. It was pure red, and he wonders if this is the difference between cultivators and martial artists. He says that there's not even a single opening, and at this level even a peak master would struggle to defeat even the lowest of cultivators. The day after they took the companions away he decided to ask Wheel a question. Wheel asked what it is, and he roughly explained what he had witnessed and asked him about the crimson domain of cultivators. Wheel says that cultivators possess something called divine consciousness, and it's known by many names such as awareness or perception, and for ordinary mortals consciousness remains within the brain, but cultivators extend that consciousness outward, blanketing the space around them, and it is the same for a spiritual creature such as himself. He hopes that answer is good enough. Yun thanks him, and he says thanks to how the conversation was phrased in big words. Young Hoon was lost. Once again the old dude came for Yun, and he shoved both of them into a spatial rift once more. We see them floating into some water. Yun is once again surprised, because every time he regresses it's a different area. They swim to shore, and he says that last time it was on top of a tree, and now it's underwater. This has to be some kind of a joke. Young Hoon asks where they are, and Yun says it's completely different, and judging by the terrain this must be the Gaidu Lake of the Yun Kingdom, and nearby should be the Changho Castle. Young Hoon asks what they are meant to do now, and if there were people they could at least ask where they were. Yun says that there are some buildings across the lake, and Young Hoon asks if that's really the case, because he can't see it. Yun dives in, saying that he'll head there and borrow some clothes and food, and as he starts swimming he wonders why he even bothered wearing his clothes, and if his memory is correct this place is a bandit hideout. He came here in his past life to annihilate them, and the leader was a late stage first, and the deputy was a mid-stage first class. The rest were nothing much, mostly just second and third rates, but there were a ton of them, and they coated their blades with poison when they fought. We see one of the bandits on the shore spotting Yun, asking what kind of nut job would come in here by himself, telling him to get lost unless he wants to die. They charge at him because he doesn't listen, and Yun takes the first dude down with a single hit. The other bandits are surprised, and Yun takes his club, saying this is good enough. He asks one of the bandits how many people he's killed, and the dude runs to him, saying that with him it'll be over 50. Yun cuts his head off, and the bandits realize they made a mistake. Yun says from now on anyone who has taken a life even once will die here. Further inside the bandits' hideout we hear a man laughing, as he and his boys are forcing women to pour their drinks, and we see some of them injured and tied up. They hear the screaming outside, wondering what's going on. Yun enters the room carrying one of their friends' heads, and the leader tells his boys to grab their weapons, since a rat just crawled in. They all start to stand up, and Yun says that he doesn't even have to ask the same questions he asked outside. Eventually the only sound echoing throughout the camp is the boss screaming, asking for his life to be spared. Yun says he has a question though, asking how long he's been in this room, and the man tells him about 15 minutes. Yun says that in his past life it took him about a full day to annihilate them, and that it was only after setting fire to this place and scattering them that he cut them down one by one with a poisoned sword, but this time in just 15 minutes he wiped them out with nothing but a wooden stick. Yun says he's going to kill the man, but the dude tells him they have a lot of money hidden. Yun doesn't hesitate after cutting his head off, and he says that he already knows what the treasure is, since he's already been here. He undoes one of the locks to the prison cells, and repeats this over and over until he frees everybody, and they start bowing, thanking him for freeing them. He takes a look at them and gives them a nod before he heads out, but one of the men asks if he could at least share his name or title, and if he does they'll repay the favor. Yun thinks about it as the dude's begging for him, and he tells them the same one that he had from his past life, which is infinite fighting spirit. Yun and Young Hoon entered Changho Castle, and they forged household passes, and purchased a manor with the money taken from the bandits. After that, just like in his previous life, he taught him about literacy and martial arts. About 2 months later, we see him having already reached the Three Blossoms Crown Peak. Yun says he's growing faster, and it's almost disheartening, but it's always like this. Some people spend their entire lives reaching the peak realm, while others, thanks only to the guidance of a peak master and a first-class martial arts, skip over the peak realm directly into the Three Blossoms Crown Peak. Yun congratulates him, saying before he's even fully mastered reading and writing, he's broken through into the Crown Peak. Young Hoon says that even he finds himself amazed that he would have such martial talent. Yun says that now that he thinks of it, after Young Hoon reached the Crown Peak, he He never once had a proper duel with him. He's always the one training under him, but what about now? He has reached the peak realm, and Young-hoon just reached the crown peak. He asks if he would like to have a duel. Young-hoon says that it sounds fine, and this time he feels like he might even win. Yoon-yoon uses the swordsmanship that Young-hoon taught him throughout his previous lives, but Young-hoon's still easily countering it. Yoon-yoon watches as the paths start to sway about. He says that his blue line is being pushed back, and he needs to evade, but if he does he'll keep getting driven backwards. For some reason he was really not wanting to lose this, and he says that this is his chance to beat him, and this will probably be his last one. Young-hoon will continue to grow at a terrifying speed, and the next time they fight he'll already be so far above him that he won't even be able to look him in the eye, and Yoon-yoon says that Young-hoon's nothing but an anomaly, and he really needs to use this chance to finally get him one over. He reaches into his wrist wraps, and pulls out 2 needles, and throws them forward, saying that he has to put everything on the line. Young-hoon blocks both of them, but it catches him off guard. Yoon-yoon says that he's broken the rhythm of his stance, and in terms of actual combat experience, he's ahead. He stabs his sword into the ground, and throws up the dirt, shattering the ground around them. Young-hoon smiles, saying that he'll show him the realm of the crown peak. Yoon-yoon wonders what this is, as every sense of his is screaming danger, and that something big is coming. Young-hoon starts to imbue ki into his blade, and he calls it blade force as he swings down. He cleaves through the ground itself, and Yoon-yoon realizes that if he takes this head on he'll be cut apart. But the severing mountain sword technique he's trained in is a peerless martial art created by him who once reached the 5th path core, and he returns with the empty valley echo from the sword, and Young-hoon's sword technique. Their auras clash, and it makes birds fly out of the nearby forest. As the dust starts to settle, Young-hoon says that was impressive. Yoon-yoon says normally his blade should have shattered, and he would still be sent flying back, yet he somehow withstood the attack. Young-hoon says that it seems like this is his defeat, as we see his blade fall to the floor. He says that since his weapon is broken, which is a disgrace for any martial man, he'll gladly take the L, but it seems that Yoon-yoon's skilled, and seasoned. Yoon-yoon says he is, but from now on he'll never be able to win against him anyways. Today's duel is the last, he won't be able to surpass Young-hoon until his next life. Yoon-yoon tells him that now that he's reached the crown peak, he's prepared a gift. Young-hoon thought the duel just now was the gift, asking what else there is. Young-hoon brings him a bunch of books, saying that this is the martial arts manual called the Record of the Martial Arts Surpassing Through Cultivation and Leaps. He bought this from an old man, and the minimum entry was said to be the crown peak. He tried reading it, but couldn't make sense of it, so he gave it to him. Yoon-yoon says this is a truly fated encounter, and he'll study it gratefully. After finishing his literacy lessons, he devoured all 6 volumes of the book, and we get a 4-month time skip. Yoon-yoon enters his house, saying that he's brought back money, and he caught a big target this time, so the bounty was pretty big. But when he looks around, Young-hoon's nowhere to be found, and the book's just read half open. Yoon-yoon says that he must have left the house entirely. Young-hoon then appears out of a black and purple rift, smiling at him. Yoon-yoon says that he shouldn't be scaring people with a hairline like that. Young-hoon says he tried one of the techniques written in the book, and he really couldn't detect him at all, and that this is truly a supreme martial manual. Yoon-yoon says the strange technique was something that he used in his past life only after reaching the 5th path core, and right now, not even a year after regression, he's already able to use it. Young-hoon says that it's just one of the techniques recorded in the book, and even for someone at the peak realm not to sense it, it means he could assassinate anyone. Yoon-yoon says as expected, talent is everything. Young-hoon tells him that he plans to roam the martial world to get real experience, asking if he'll be coming along. Yoon-yoon says no, and Young-hoon asks why not. Yoon-yoon says that he needs to stabilize his realm in the peak a little longer. Young-hoon says that it makes sense, as he is still in the early peak realm, he's not able to use sword threads. Yun says that too, but he's also taken an interest in the imperial court. If he serves in the government office, then one day he might help him who's active in the martial world. That is how they decided to part for a while. Of course, his reason for entering the imperial court had ulterior motives. During his time as a strategist for the Murim Alliance, he learned that the royal family of the Yun kingdom was more deeply entangled with cultivators than any other group. Rumor had it the Yun imperial family was even a cadet branch of the Cultivation Path clan, so he first applied to join their military. As he had become well known in the martial world as a bounty hunter, the military welcomed him eagerly. Once inside the army, he quickly earned recognition, and rose to the rank of general, and he applied for the Imperial Guard, and passed without issue. All this was achieved within 5 years since he regressed. One of his superiors says that his mission is to guard His Majesty with his life. As someone at the peak realm, he should be more than capable. Yun says he'll keep that in mind, and he was placed into the Imperial Shadow Guard, and trained for 4 months in the stealth techniques, and the art of concealing presence, before being deployed to the Emperor's protection. At last the day came when he could stand before the Emperor, and he made a shocking discovery. The Emperor himself was actually a cultivator. The Emperor stares at him, and Yun says that it is the divine consciousness of a cultivator, which means he was born already possessing a spiritual root. The fact became even more certain after meeting some of the crowned princes and princesses, and among the imperial family the overwhelming majority were cultivators with divine consciousness. Still, they don't seem to be high-level cultivators, and none of them can compare to the fox, or the others who came down. But even so, since they are the key refining realm, he doesn't understand why a mere peak realm expert like him must serve as their guard. Besides, the Emperor's hidden presence is absolutely not at the level of key refining for a star. At his level he is stronger than the entire Hidden Shadow Guard put together, so the Hidden Guard exists only because he doesn't want to bother dealing with assassins himself. The Emperor is the one in the Imperial family most threatened by assassination. Almost every night assassins came, and every night he fought and subdued them, and he wonders if he should call it fortunate that he gained so much real combat experience. And we get a 5-year time skip of him doing this. During that time, Young Hoon became the leader of the Murim Alliance, and as the Emperor's guard he was officially forbidden from meeting the Murim Alliance leader, so they met in secret, drinking together and catching up. And one night he looked at Young Hoon's hand, and he saw tons of red strings. He says that the red lines of course mean that it's the optimal attack route against him, and if he steps inside he will be cut down instantly, and it feels very similar to the divine consciousness of a cultivator. It's a pity, because if he had reached the realm of Crown Peak he would have seen so much more, and for now he must observe even this much closely. He can't grasp everything, but this must be the sword threads, as once more he is going through the body reformation, that blue aura escapes from his mouth, and he starts to regrow his bald head. Bright golden light shines out, and he is once more reborn into the body of a 20-year-old man. Yun congratulates him on achieving reversal of age, and Young Hoon says that he safely achieved the 5-path core, but it's truly a pity for him. Had he achieved Crown Peak he would have been able to see much more. Yun says that was exactly his thought, but there's nothing to be done, as his realm is still shallow. Still, it should have helped him somewhat reflect on it carefully when he returns. Yun then says he must have met a few cultivators by now, and Young Hoon says that's right. Yun says to his eyes there is divine consciousness in the domain he's formed, or at least it looks remarkably similar. He asks if he thinks there is a connection. Young Hoon says that he thinks so. In his domain he believes he could fight cultivators of the key refining realm on equal terms. Perhaps one who reaches 5-path core shares a vision similar to that of cultivators. Yun says he sees, and that means even martial artists who reach 5-path core can cultivate on par with cultivators. Just as the gap between first rate and peak is immense, the difference between peak and 5-path is even larger than that. This experience will surely help him one day when he reaches 5-path core himself. That day, after receiving some martial guidance from Young Hoon, he returned once again to the Imperial Palace. A few days later there was another assassin on the rafters. He spots him, and can instantly tell that it's a peak master, as an attack as there's a red thread straight to his face. The attack flies, and he dodges it, and he says judging by the aura he has only just stepped into the peak realm. They leap at him, and Yun starts fending them off, and he says it's strange. He should be fully focused on this fight, yet his mind cannot shake the sight of Young Hoon ascending to the 5-path core. He asks himself what sword ki truly is. He says that to him it is proof that one has achieved sword-body unity, the pinnacle of martial bursts, and when one reaches peak realm the optimal path is always visible. By following that path sword ki never extinguishes. The optimal path he sees is ultimately the extreme limit pointed to by his sword art. Sword ki is the essence of his sword art fused with sword body unity elevated to the ultimate. That sword art is sword ki, which is the conclusion he's reaching in his training, but he says it doesn't add up. If that were true then the corpses moved by cultivators should also be able to use sword ki if they've learned sword arts. So that means sword ki is not merely sword art, and now he understands. Though it may be born from it, its core is the will of the martial artist who wields the sword. These red and blue lines weren't just optimal paths or enemy intent, they were the will of the martial artist expressing martiality. They were the directions of intent. Upon realizing this he felt a strange sensation in the hand holding his sword, as though veins had sprouted from the blade and pierced his skin. The assassin starts coming in for another attack, and we see floating swords around them. Yun charges in and swings forward once, instantly shattering it, and even starts ripping off the mask, and we see it's a woman. As she flies off beside him, she bounces along the floor into the wall. He says this is not the end. If he continues to infuse sword intent, he can finally achieve what Young Hoon was talking about. The woman is surprised, and Yun says that this is manifesting tangibility even in reality. Sword Threads, about 10 years after reaching the peak realm, finally attained the mid-peak stage, and was able to wield them. The woman stares up at him. As he approaches her, he says that's a familiar face, and she must be one of the Emperor's new handmaidens. He says to be a peak master at such a young age, she has a talent that could surely reach the crown peak, if she were allowed to live. She says that he's the infinite fighting spirit. He asks if she knows him. 10 years ago he was definitely known as that, but at some point the people of the Yun Kingdom started instead calling him the infinite fighting monster. She says that her little brother was more talented than her, but because of that bastard emperor, Yun stops her, saying that appealing to his emotions is useless. Principle is to execute assassins on the spot, as the rest of his unit run in. She tells him that he's making a mistake. The common people are dying because of the emperor's orders. We see blood flying. He says that he's sorry, but in his position, being swayed by an assassin is a grave crime, as she lays there motionless on the floor. That night he says he felt a pang of regret for ending such a great talent with his own hands. With the help of his colleagues he cleaned up the body. There was so much noise a moment ago, but as expected the emperor doesn't stir from his chambers. A soundproofing spell is cast on the emperor's bedchambers, and it says that he feels no need to hide the fact that he's a cultivator. After all, everyone in the Shadow Guard knows that he is one. Those who become peak masters can discern the domain of a cultivator with their own two eyes. They all guard the emperor without complaint simply because it is their given duty. The assassination attempts on the emperor have been increasing lately. Recently the kingdom has been enjoying an era of peace and prosperity under the emperor's rule. And of course there are still poor people, but there haven't been cases of ordinary commoners falling into ruin and turning into bandits, so who could be so persistently sending assassins after the emperor? They even coated the blade with a very potent poison. The assassin was from their kingdom and even knew his title. He decides to head out, saying that he can take his time to figure it out. The purpose for coming to the imperial palace was only to gather information about cultivators. We get another time skip, this time it's 10 years. And he steadily performed his duties as a guard, and earned the emperor's trust. At the same time he used the authority he gained to uncover information from all corners of the palace. Of course he couldn't access classified info, but by piecing together documents only available in the government offices, he was able to find a clue about the cultivator clans, and has managed to locate the region where they reside. He says still for information about cultivators to be this hard to obtain, it's still much better than his days as the Murim Alliance's strategist though. Plus maybe because he's gaining real combat experience every night, it feels like he can aim for crown peak in this life. He looks at the census report and how the number of orphans and beggars have greatly decreased, and due to this the number of those joining bandit groups disappeared. He says this was a report made by the government office, but it's so sloppy, the most important part is missing. How could the number of beggars have decreased? He wonders if they starved to death. If such a large number of people had, there's no way his past self never would have known about it. And it wasn't a simple case of them moving up the social ladder, nor did the emperor provide relief to the poor. This is literally on the level of being erased. Besides, there wasn't a famine or a war in the kingdom either. He recalls the woman's words, and says that's strange, the current emperor may not be a saint, but he's at least an average ruler, so where did all the erased people go? If it is something that even the government offices can't grasp, there's a possibility it's related to the cultivators. These information gaps have always been related to the cultivators, and he supposes he'll have to leave the investigation beyond this point to Young Hoon. Speaking of, at the Murim Alliance, the retirement ceremony for the First Lord Young Hoon was held. Many lamented his retirement, but Young Hoon himself looked rather relieved. For a good reason, he stepped down from the position of Alliance Lord, meaning that he had fully comprehended the 6 volumes that he was given, and finally set out to fight the cultivators. Yun says that he seems refreshed. Young Hoon says that he thought he was an assassin, and he's a bit relieved. His presence is becoming more and more like an assassin's every day. Yun immediately relayed the information and conclusions he had obtained from the imperial palace to him. As expected, he showed great interest when he mentioned how it seemed to be related to the cultivators. He says he will tell him a place where they reside, so he'd like him to go and dig information up on them. Young Hoon says he was also curious to find out what they were up to, and so through Young Hoon he decided to uncover the secret schemes of the cultivator clans. That night he heads back to the palace. One of his men says the north gate is clear. The number of assassins and intrusions has decreased as well lately, and he supposes they can't send an infinite number of peak level masters either. Soon as he says that, there is a giant fire explosion at the gate. One of the men starts burning to death. A man enters holding a talisman, saying that they are all peak masters, and it sure is a pain. These concealment arts don't work properly because of their annoying perception. Yun says that they ran out of peak masters, so now they're sending a cultivator as an assassin. All of the members of the Shadow Guard are spreading out, ready to fight him. They ask if they really think they can. The strongest opponents they've probably ever fought are still people at the first level of the key refining stage, but he can wield the power of the second level. After he kills all of them, he will kill that bastard from a collateral branch of the McClukey clan. He launches out 2 talismans, and they explode behind the entire group, burning the peak masters alive in an instant. He seems very proud of himself, but Yun manages to keep his calm, and cuts through the attack. The cultivator is surprised, saying that for someone who only managed to block 1 attack, his gaze is way too arrogant. Yun stays staring up at him, and the dude calls him an insect. Outside, we see a sword breaking off a barrier, and the normal guards wonder what's going on inside. Because they're unable to even approach the building, and they say that it could be that a Taoist has broken in, and they need to go call reinforcements immediately. Inside, we don't know how many are dead, but we see one of them alive, and everybody else around him isn't. There's still an explosion, because Yun is still in there fighting. He says that even for just a single second, if he can evolve the sword threads, he might have a chance to land a wound. The cultivator asks how many times he's told him that with his strength he'll never pierce his spell formation. Yun tries once more, and we see it rippling across, but there's no damage. He then starts to pour more energy into it, and it starts generating a new reaction. The cultivator looks scared, as Yun manages to actually cut through it, sending him flying backwards, and cutting him as well. Yun says that the sword drained every ounce of his ki, and even without enlightenment, it really is impossible to sustain it for more than a second. He falls on the floor, and the rest of his squad members who are still alive just watch with pained expressions, as the cultivator flies over and stomps on his back. He starts doing it repeatedly, asking who he thinks he is to cut him. He had thought to let him go as a small diversion before cutting him down, and he's changed his mind. He'll skewer him through, and grind him until he's dead. He throws up talismans into the air, and they start forming spikes. The Shadow Guard members can't do anything but watch as the attacks start to fly around, piercing Yun, and killing a lot of them too. He tells them to stop interfering, calling them insects once more. He says no matter how much they struggle against the cultivator, they still don't understand that their fate is to be crushed, and die like this. The ones who are still alive look terrified, and Yun says that after spending all of his energy he at once shredded his insides. The cultivator says that he's still alive, wanting to see how long he'll last, and he starts stomping his hand, calling him a worm. Yun says he really is no different from one. No talent, no skill, even in this 4th life of his. He says that it's nothing more than that of a worm. He says that he's begging for his life. Yun says that the time he spent training, as well as the time of endurance and hardship, will not vanish. He starts to raise his hand, and he says that from the moment he tried to conceal himself, he had a rough sense that he'd never once strained his body, never fought by measuring life and death, and he was merely born with extraordinary talent, and lucky enough to learn cultivation. And while he can lose to someone like this, who hasn't put an ounce of effort into their life, the years he spent with all of his efforts are not something that he'll just let be walked on by others, and he refuses to give up. Even the struggling of a worm is not useless. He pulls the guy to the floor, and he tells him to stop talking nonsense, and take his hands off of him. His nose begins bleeding, and he asks what's going on. Yun says the poison is taking effect, piercing through his defense spell, and his attack was only incidental. The true weapon was the venom smeared upon the blade. The cultivator is begging for an antidote, and Yun asks if he really thought that would happen. He won't even give him the chance to detoxify, telling him to taste the worm that he mocked. He puts his hand into his mouth, saying that if he gags it he can't chant, and he's going to bind his hand so he can't form seals. He tells him to start casting his spell. One of the men yells that they have to go help him, as the talisman on the outside now begins being burned, and the barrier begins to get cracked. They all start rushing into the palace, and they see some of the Shadow Guard taking Yun away, while the rest are standing over the cultivator. He says that he may have been a worm, but in death he looks no different. It then takes us to Yun waking up. He sees smoke right in front of him and asks if it's alright to smoke next to a patient. The man says that tobacco is a herb great for your health. Yun says that he forgot this is said in ancient times. The man says that His Majesty has assigned the imperial physician to him for his sake and he should be grateful for his generosity. Yun says that his body feels light and that the physician is certainly skilled, and he almost wants to learn his methods. The man tells him that the physician mentioned that his right hand would heal, but it would never be like it was before, so he shouldn't strain himself. Yun says that the cultivator really crushed his hand, and he guesses there's no way it would be normal again after, but he's grateful if he can use it regardless. The man says that it's good to see him taking it well and that His Majesty was astounded by his willpower and gave him a reward that he can open it himself. He can't formally reward the shadow guards, so he told him to give it to him. He's given the empty key pill. Yun then opens it and the man says from what he hears, it is created by removing the key essence of the key building pill that key refining stage cultivators eat before they move on to the next stage. Though he's not sure what exactly that means. Yun says that it means it's a pill made from scraps of a key building pill, and since he has worked as a physician, he has made elixirs a few times before. Whenever an elixir is made, scraps and residue will always be left over. A pill made from those scraps, when put nicely, is referred to as removing the key essence. He must not know since it's not common knowledge to those who aren't aware. Typically it's just scraps without any leftover effects that physicians sell as hangover medicine or to performers eager for a bit more strength. He didn't think the emperor would be this stingy. The man says from what he hears, when consumed by a mortal, it will increase their lifespan by 10 years. Yun is surprised to hear this, asking if it's even possible. He says to the point that even the leader shows interest in this pill, it means that it has to be true. But it's not like he can take away a gift from the emperor. Yun says he will take the pill once his ki flow stabilizes further. The man tells him not to forget the grace of His Majesty. Of course, he should eat it when his lifespan is almost running out and not when his ki flow is stabilized if he wants to see if it will really work. The emperor comes with great benefits. It means that if he eats it right before he dies, he can live for 10 more years. He made the right choice in joining the Imperial Guard, and he has a good feeling about this life. Some time later we see his sword bouncing across the floor as he's trying to train, but his hand hurts way too much. He says his body is healed, but an uncontrollable pain shoots through his arm whenever he grips the sword. He's in a state where he cannot perform all 24 forms of the Severing Mountain Sword, and he wonders if this is the end of his life of martial arts. But he tells himself no. His path toward reaching the martial peak was one filled with suffering, so what does it matter if a bit more pain is added to such a path? Pain has always accompanied him like a shadow, and he will not give up at this point. 10 whole years pass by, which means it's been 30 years since his last regression. He's grown used to the pain in his grip, and his ability to control sword silk has matured, and using hidden weapons became more and more natural. Most importantly, Young Hoon revealed to him through hidden codes in his letters that the cultivator's secret was close to being uncovered. Weaker clans live hidden from the rest of the world with strong barriers that prevent others from seeing them. Weaker cultivators sometimes build manors amongst mortals, but proper cultivators, especially those who are of a rightful cultivator clan lineage, always live in the safety of said barriers. It is said that mortals also reside with the cultivators because the cultivators require slaves and servants to do their bidding. According to Young Hoon's new information, the people responsible for sending all of those peak martial artists to assassinate the emperor are of a cultivator clan. They gather talented mortals within their domain to train them into peak assassins. Now he finally understands the situation. It's quite likely that the poor people who disappeared went to the cultivator domains. There, they are raised to be assassins or live out their days as slaves to the cultivators. Seeing as how they even sent cultivators to assassinate the emperor later, the emperor must be caught up in a power struggle between two clans. He says that he should stop worrying about this and focus on his martial arts instead. Young Hoon then hops into the window, asking what he's muttering about. Yun is surprised to see him, saying that he just finished reading his letter and burned it as well. Yun says he sent that last month and guesses it arrived late. Young Hoon says he visited him directly because he discovered something truly shocking. Yun asks what it is, and Young Hoon says first he'll remove this spell around them to explain there are two cultivator clans within Yangguo. Yun says he saw that in his letter. One is the Mokli clan, who are the current ruling family, but he doesn't know about the other. He says that it is the previous imperial family of this nation, the Jin clan. For centuries the Mokli and Jins had many hidden struggles in order to dominate the resources of this nation. The Mokli finally pushed out the Jin clan, who was in power for a long time about a century ago, and led them to where they are today. After the Mokli clan gained control of Yangguo, he heard the forces of the Jin clan decrease significantly. That is why they have been training mortals to become assassins. Yun says he understood that much from the letters he sent. Young Hoon tells him that what's important now is the following. He asks him what he thinks is the reason the Jin clan was able to raise so many mortals to reach martial peak and how they could produce them as if they were made in a factory. The Jin clan has been infusing their bodies with the evangelical spirits of their kin in order to draw out all of their life force and willpower to heighten their talents to their absolute limits. Yun asks if he's saying that the Jin family killed the family members of the assassins and forced their souls into their bodies. Young-hoon says no, the ones who killed their families is none other than the Mokli clan who controls the empire at the moment. For the past few decades, they have kidnapped orphans, beggars, and poor farmers to create elixirs. They have gathered the innate true energy and blood of mortals to create a forbidden pill that increases the lifespan of cultivators. In order to gather more ingredients for that elixir, they kidnap the bottom class of society and turn them into pills. Yun asks if that's not cannibalism, but Young-hoon says that it is. They are literally eating humans. Yun says that he can't believe that cultivators who were not of the unorthodox or demonic roots would do such a disgusting thing. They claim to hone their ki with Taoist principles and ascend to the heavens. He starts vomiting, saying that he couldn't help but puke. It was partially because of his disgust that they were cannibals, but also the life he dedicated to guarding such bastards. He wonders how many innocent people he has helped kill with his own hands. Young-hoon says that as he was investigating the Mokli clan, he was contacted by the cultivators of the Jin clan. They offered him the opportunity to participate in a raid against them, and he decided to join them because he can't allow those filthy human-eating bastards to live. Such evil cannot be allowed to rule the nation. He toured many martial arts sects to gather martial masters who would join his cause, and he tells Yun to join him. If the Jin clan reclaims the throne, things will at least be a bit better than with the revolting Mokli clan. Yun says that at the end of his second life, this must be the real reason for the cultivators attack them. He said he would participate, so he left with Young-hoon that day to join forces with those attacking the cultivators of the empire. They ended up going to a pavilion located on the outskirts of Shokyung City, and all of the greatest martial artists of Yungwo were gathered there. Yun sees them all and says that if it weren't for the cultivators, they could easily overthrow the empire themselves, since all of them have attained martial peak. Some of the elders were displeased at Yun being there because he works for the government. Yun says there's only one way to get them to trust him, and he takes in a deep breath before screaming insults at the emperor. He began unleashing all of the frustration he had pent up toward the emperor through profanity, and after slandering him for some time, they all began telling him to stop, saying that even if he was a spy, they would still execute him after hearing such words. Yun says that he still had plenty left, but through his actions, everybody came to accept him, and they departed to destroy an outpost of the demonic cultivators. When they arrived, there were some cultivators waiting for them. Yun was surprised more by their clothes, because they were the same as those who attempted to assassinate the emperor a few years ago. These are not the people they were eliminating, just the group they met up with. But Young-hoon says he kept his promise, bringing others who agreed with his will, as he really wants to slay those cultivators. One of the men says that they need to prepare to depart. Yun asks where he's going, and Young-hoon says that he has a place to stop by, so follow him. Yun asks where he's heading, and he says that these are the graves of those who died at the hands of the Mokli clan. He recovered what he could of their bodies and tried his best to make the graves. Yun asks if he really buried them all himself, and Young-hoon shows him something called the Heaven Leading Spell. He says their souls are filled with vengeance at being killed by the Mokli clan's cultivators, so in order to allow their souls to depart, he learned the spell that leads them to heaven from the Jin clan cultivators. He says that Yun should not forget that all spells of cultivators are disgusting things. What is important is how they are used, and he should focus on keeping the heart of a human at all times. He must not forget that the souls of the Mokli clan are the cultivators. He is not going to be able to do that at all times, rather than just getting stronger, but he needs to steel himself so they can pursue the emperor. They head into the mountains, and one of the cultivators they are with says that they are going to open the pathway to the domain of the Mokli clan. Space itself starts to warp, and before them the view is completely changed into that of a castle. The air smells of nothing but blood and rotting corpses. Atop the wall, the Mokli clan members say that they are being attacked by the Jinns, and they start to deploy a barrier. One of the Jin members says that it is undoubtedly excellent, but Young-hoon starts to walk up, and one of the men asks their elder why the mortal is walking up as if he owns the place. The elder says that he may be mortal, but he is special. He knows it may be hard to believe, but they were on equal grounds in terms of progress. The cultivators are in disbelief, and Young-hoon starts to summon an orb in his hand, looking visibly strained. Yun recognizes it, saying that's the realm beyond the five energies converging to the origin. Young-hoon shoots the orb forward, and it starts to clash with the barrier, shattering it in an instant and sending out a giant shockwave. The cultivators are in disbelief, but the elder expected as much. Now that there is a gap open, they are being swarmed by thousands of jiangshis. The elder says they need to break past them and enter the castle, and an all-out war ensues. The cultivators of the Mokli clan say that they are all top-grade martial artists, and they need to go call for reinforcements. Yun says that seeing these familiar clothes in the Jiangshis, he now understands that the bastard in his previous life is the one who was the cultivator of the Mokli clan, but he wonders if maybe it's the will of the cultivators who control them. But he says maybe not, and he wonders why they can't use sword ki. He didn't spot the man controlling them, saying that judging by the size of his consciousness, he's around a first star of the ki refining stage. Yun charges in and slices him across the head. He doesn't kill him though, he just cuts his forehead, and the man starts panicking. Yun grabs him by the collar, asking him what all of this is, as we see nothing but corpses littered along the floor. The man says that he'll tell him everything, and this is the first refinement process. Yun tells him to explain further, and he says that they extract the blood and ki of the mortals and put them on a spell formation to create origin blood. If they deliver said blood to their higher-ups, they take them to a domain of a higher rank and perform the secondary refinement by mixing the origin blood, and after a fifth refinement, when alchemists perform it on several thousand mortals worth of blood and ki in the form of living blood, the rejuvenation pill would be complete. He says if Yun wishes, he will give him all of the origin blood that he has refined. Yun says at least now he doesn't have any hesitation left in terms of killing him, but as Yun goes to do it, an attack comes from his side. He dodges it and turns, asking his squad leader what he's doing here, and the man tells him to be quiet, as he doesn't know any traitors. While they are still fighting, Yun asks the squad leader if he knows what kind of acts the Imperial family are committing right now, and he says that he does as he charges in and swings down at Yun. Yun avoids, asking why he still swears loyalty to the Imperial family, saying that no human could do such a thing. The squad leader says that they are the arms and legs of the Emperor, and that they don't think for themselves, they simply move according to his will. Yun calls him stubborn, saying that people like them are mere commoners and nothing more than livestock. The squad leader kicks him away, and Yun can tell that his skills have improved. Right now, he's nearing the Three Flower Realms. The squad leader asks if it's any different on his side, and if he's confident that those are the Jin clan any different. Yun goes to say at least those people, but the squad leader cuts him off, saying that they all view ordinary people as insects, and only the scaling methods are different. In the end, they too will grind down the citizens of the empire to serve their own meals, and they may even prove worse than the ones ruling now. As he starts preparing his attack, Yun says that he can't block this, but he still sees some strange light, wondering what exactly this glow is. The squad leader says that if neither side is any better, then he'll stay loyal to the side he already chose, and he thrusts forward toward Yun's face. Yun says that he's intending to kill him in this strike, and if that's his conviction, he'll meet it, as he uses Echoing Valley of the Severing Mountain swordsmanship. Their attacks collide with one another, but the squad leader's is completely destroyed, and he's left speechless. Yun tells him that he shall honor his resolve, and that he only has one technique that can manage to block that enhanced ki head-on, but he can't control its power. As we see the squad leader now missing an arm, he says as expected, how many times he sees his swordsmanship, it really is astounding. Yun says it's far too refined a sword art for someone like him, but the squad leader says that's not the way he sees it. The technique he used was the very enlightenment of the three flowers, it was the most beautiful form he's ever witnessed. He's pursued martial enlightenment and sought to reach the three flowers, but when he finally reached it, he realized it was nothing more than the level of a lowly mortal, and he came to understand that no martial art could ever surpass the realm of those who cultivate. So all of the martial arts he devoted his life to meant nothing, and in the end, all he could do was search for some meaning to justify his path. It's a shame that the will they both carry is so different. Yun then asks all the other men why they didn't interfere in their battle, because if they had joined in while he was fighting the squad leader, he may be the one lying dead right now. They say that it was the squad leader's request, and that they were told that if they intervened, he would have used poison or hidden weapons, but he wanted it to be a duel of pure martial strength. Yun asks why they still call him vice squad leader, and they say that once a commander, always a commander. Once loyalty is sworn to His Majesty, it remains eternal as well. Yun asks if they intend to keep their allegiance to the current emperor, and that he's sorry, but he may have to kill them all today. Back to the Younghun side, we see him sending cultivators flying through the air, and he's telling all of the men of the Jin clan to advance, as they need to destroy the refining furnace. The martial artists start running and attacking those of the Mokli clan, and those of the Jin clan begin unleashing the same cultivator technique, unleashing a barrage of attacks. The Mokli cultivators are asking where the reinforcements are, and where the branch family bastard is. Back to Yun's side, We see him cutting the sword of one of the members of the Shadow Guard, but he's sustained quite a few injuries, and they ask why he chose such a difficult path that he's even using paralysis poison instead of just killing them all. If he had, he could have subdued them without taking any injuries, so why did he choose to take the damage himself? He says that they still called him squad leader, and that was enough for him. One of the men laughs, saying that he's truly interesting, asking if he's reached the 3 flowers. He didn't see any red light, but the way he broke his guard made him think so. Yun says that he's sorry, but he hasn't. He's only starting to grasp its edges, bit by bit. He did see the 3rd color, but he's unable to see it consistently. There's a purple light in the midst of the blue and the reds, so he thinks maybe he needs another life and death fight. One of the men says that it's incredible for his skills to be at that level, and that this is why his father sent him. Yun says that this is the Crown Prince, and tells him that it's been a while. If he's been watching all this time, he should have intervened earlier. He says that if he stepped in, that would make things less fun, and besides, he shouldn't call him Crown Prince here. He's representing the branch of the Mockley clan as a reinforcement. Yun asks him if watching his own guards die is that fun, and the Crown Prince says that he told him not to call him that already, but since he keeps calling him that, he'll tell him something asking if he knows why he became the Crown Prince. He starts to release an aura, which surprises Yun, and he says that it's because he reached the star of the key refining stage at a young age, just as his father has. No matter how magnificent Yun's energy bloom enlightenment may be, he's only at best on par with the first 2 or 3rd star of the key refining stage. So how could someone like him possibly defeat him, who has reached the 4th star? He wouldn't need his guards to begin with. Yun can tell that he's not bluffing, saying that even the 3 flowers martial masters would have to risk their lives to fight him, but he's just barely reaching the edge of it, so if he fights him, he'll definitely die. But for some reason, he can't stop from smiling. He says maybe it's because he doesn't mind dying. If it means he can grasp the thread of enlightenment, what importance is there to it? And if one can attain enlightenment in the morning, it's fine to die in the evening. That was what Young-hoon once taught him. While fighting against 50 people at the key building, in his past life he could never understand that teaching, but now he thinks that he does. The Crown Prince laughs at him, saying that he's more of a fool than he thought. Yun leaps up off the floor and starts to attack with one of Young-hoon's martial arts from the book he's been writing. Yun leaps into the air once more, and a purple mist starts to envelop him as he disappears into it. The Crown Prince is surprised, asking where he went, and Yun says he understands now the records that reach the heavens are something that he's memorized, but he didn't understand them until now. That's why he could not grasp the divine arts just by having them. However, the moment he saw the purple path, he started to get it. If it's the colors clashing with each other to make martial arts, so why can't you just attack the color itself? That was the sentence he could not understand prior to the 3 flowers, but he gets it now. Color is the will of a person to its attack. The color is to eliminate the opponent's will itself, as he cleaves through the presence of the Crown Prince. He says that instead of just exchanging attacks of will with the opponent, and while the Crown Prince is still freaking out, he says the reason Young-hoon disappeared was because he cut into his will, and that's why he couldn't see him. It's a martial art that puts someone of the Murim at equal footing with the cultivator, even just for a split moment. This is the martial arts created by man so he can transcend the heavens. He puts the blade right to the Crown Prince's throat, but it gets blocked by some kind of energy barrier. The Crown Prince asks what kind of trick this is, but Yun is just caught off guard that he surrounded his entire body with a barrier. He gets sent flying backward, crashing into a building. The Crown Prince tells him it was interesting, but he'll show him that he's nothing compared to a proper cultivator. As he starts to unleash a tornado, it flies straight toward Yun. He says he needs to dodge this, but it starts shooting little discs that fly straight to him. He leaps, avoiding it, as all of the Jiangshi behind him start getting torn to bits. He says maybe he should try using the martial arts again, but the hurricane the Crown Prince created is like blades, and he'll be ripped to pieces if he approaches it. Even if he wants to get close, he needs to get through the barrier he has over himself. Dodging attacks is no problem if he just observes his will from the outside of his conscious territory, but a martial artist's internal energy is less pure than that of a cultivator's, so no matter how much internal energy he has, he'll tire faster than that of a cultivator, so he has to end this quickly. In order to do that, he needs to reach the 3 flower stage right now. The Crown Prince is confused, asking him why he's just standing there, saying that if he's tired, this is gonna get boring. One of the attacks flies straight toward him, and Yun raises his blade, using the Severing Mountain Sword Ascending Vein, cutting straight through it. The Crown Prince is surprised, and Yun says that his sword hand hurts so much, but he needs to take this head on. More attacks fly in, and he continues using more of the severing mountain sword to cut through all of them, creating a net in front of himself. Some attacks go through, cutting him, but he says it doesn't matter, even if his body were just ashes. The Crown Prince starts throwing out some gang signs, summoning a giant fish out of the tornado, telling him to die. Yun says that if he can't stop that one, he can't dodge it either, and he can tell instinctively that he will die the moment it comes at him. But for some reason, he has no fear, he just continues to chase the faint purple-hued will, and he wonders what exactly it signifies. Blue is the will of self-defense, which is why it's coming from him, and the red is the will of murderous intent, which is why it's coming from the enemy, and the color purple is some kind of mix of the two. The fish gets closer, and he says until now he thought the will of others was always red, but if he changes positions, the opponent's color will be blue and his will be red, and it's all just a matter of perspective, and perhaps they are all the same color. Martial arts is not completed alone, and he must connect it with someone else, a realm at which he can see his own actions like through a mirror, through the opponent's will, and he says this must be 3 flowers gathering at the summit. He reflects his moves onto the cultivator's will and sees how much ki he had wasted. He begins to use enhanced sword ki, saying that while he was unable to maintain it for more than a second, even if he used up all of his internal energy, it's because martial arts is not something you do on your own. He must connect with the opponent and the world's will and the world's truths to truly complete martial arts. He uses the 5th form of the severing mountain sword, the severing mountain itself. He does a giant cleave, and we see the fish going to bite it before getting cut into pieces. All of the Shadow Guard witness this duel on the ground after having been poisoned by him. They all knew the result, because no matter how much he struggled, it would be futile. The opponent was a cultivator, after all, which is a being of a different realm from someone like them. But they were still shocked by what they were witnessing, because in the middle of the battle, he was reaching the 3 flowers gathering at the summit. Yun starts to breathe in the golden aura around him, saying that all the wasted energy is returning to him. He tells the Crown Prince to prepare himself. The Crown Prince forms more hand seals, saying that Yun only broke a single spell before, so he wants to see if he can break this one too. Instead of a fish, he summons multiple serpents. Yun says that he no longer feels as if those things are capable of killing him. Now that he has attained the 3 flowers, he understands that the transcending peak steps in Mountain Lord martial arts are a single martial art. As he charges forward, he says it's called the Mountain Lord transcends to the peak. He says that he can use this for flight, and he actually begins flying through the dragon heads. The Crown Prince is terrified as Yun continues leaping straight at him before vanishing using Young Hoon's martial arts. The Crown Prince says that there's no way he can get through his whirlwind. Yun stares at it, saying that it's a concentration of cultivation techniques where millions of wind blades spin. However, he uses the 9th form of the Mountain Lord's severing sword landscape painting, saying that he can deflect it. The Crown Prince is caught off guard, and Yun readies his blade, saying that he wasn't able to pierce his defensive techniques before, but sword-enhanced ki will be different. He cleaves through, slicing the Crown Prince's neck, sending blood flying. The Crown Prince grabs onto his throat to stop the blood and attacks Yun, screaming for him to die. Yun blocks the attack with his sword, and the Crown Prince, in a panic, tells him not to come any closer. He continues to fire attacks wildly, screaming for Yun to get away, only for Yun to walk closer and closer. The Crown Prince starts running, but Yun says that he won't let him. As he chases him down, he cleaves through his lower body, cutting his legs clean off. Bro definitely clipped his nuts, no shot he didn't. The Crown Prince falls to the floor screaming, asking how a mere mortal could do this to him. He yells, asking Yun really believes he's doing the right thing, as joining the Jin clan is no different from serving monsters like them, and that there's no way a cultivator of the Jin clan has reached the key building stage without eating pills made from mortals. He says that his father gave him an empty key pill years ago, and if Yun took that, then he's no different. Yun holds it up, telling him not to worry, as he crushes the pill in his hand. He says he has no intention of consuming pills made by cultivators. The Crown Prince is left speechless as Yun raises his blade, telling him farewell. But before he can finish his swing, a completely different attack flies in, cutting Yun's head clean off. He starts to see his own body from the ground, confused as to why it's upside down, before realizing his head has been severed. This is not an attack that an early key refining stage cultivator could perform. It must be something far beyond an attack only a key building stage cultivator, or Young Hoon himself, could unleash. As his consciousness fades, flashes of his entire life pass before his eyes, his first, his second, and all that followed. He remembers how, in his second life, when Young Hoon cut the head off a cultivator, he was filled with joy and awe, yet it ended in an instant. He had taught young Hoon, witnessed him overcome the cultivators, and gained the hope that mortals could win. Then came the day when he could do nothing but watch, powerless. He whispers that if only he had been stronger, if only he had tried harder, if only he had done more. Now that he's risen to this level, he cannot let himself die again without doing anything. He needs to kill him. We see the crown prince looking down at the amulet on his neck, which is smoking from the attack. He laughs in disbelief, realizing he actually survived. It's the talisman his father gave him, a single-use attack that creates a strike at the level of a key building stage cultivator. He laughs hysterically, saying that he has won. Union asks if this is how fate will have it, and that mortals will always lose to cultivators. He recalls Young Hoon saying that even cultivators can die to martial artists, that they're still just mortals themselves, and they sent 50 of them once to kill him. Even if he was unrivaled under the heavens, even if he was the strongest martial artist of all time, cultivators in the key building stage are as numerous as stars in the sky. Yun's body starts to twitch. The crown prince says that he's used up all of his energy. But Yun, watching from afar, remembers that final fight of Young Hoon in that life. He says that this was the wall that could not be crossed, a wall so overwhelming that it nearly broke him. It was the moment he almost gave up on martial arts entirely. However, Young Hoon was different. Yun's body raises the sword into the air, guided purely by willpower. The crown prince stares in terror as the severed body moves, trembling, and raises its blade once more. Tears fill his eyes as he screams, asking how a mere mortal could have such will. Yun recalls himself asking Young Hoon if it made sense for him to sacrifice himself. Young Hoon answers that Yun has tried endlessly until now, and if it's him, he'll undoubtedly succeed. The blade falls. Using the same technique as Young Hoon, he slices clean through the crown prince's head even from beyond death. As his vision fades, he recalls Young Hoon's words, that he would one day witness a better tomorrow. Yun had dedicated his entire life to martial arts. His hand, which had endured decades of gripping a sword until it broke, and his will, which never wavered, both continued their duty even after his death. Even at the moment the crown prince died, he was filled with disbelief and fear, while Yun, with his severed head on the ground, wore a smile. He recalls Young Hoon telling him to keep swinging with all his effort, because effort never betrays you. He needs to live with the mindset that it's alright to die in the evening if you reach a higher stage in the morning. That someday, his efforts would bring him a new dawn worthy of the sweat he shed. This is how his 5th regression ended. If you've watched till the end, comment, Mentalist, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.